Living without anxiety, controlling your life is entirely possible. All it takes is learning to see things from a different perspective. Buddhists figured this out centuries ago. And over the next few hours, I will share their teachings with you, not as ancient philosophy, but as practical tools for your modern mind. These teachings can help you recover your calm, release the tension you are holding onto, and return to your center. All you need to do is listen, gently. Over time, peace will make its way back into your life. I am truly glad you are here, friend. If you would like, leave a comment, just a word or two, about how you are feeling. You are not alone in this. Now, make yourself comfortable. Grab a blanket, dim the lights, lie down if that feels right. This is your time. For the next few hours, let everything else fade into the background. Maybe anxiety visits you daily, or it comes in waves. Perhaps you are exhausted from fighting it, or maybe you are simply seeking deeper peace. Whatever brought you here, you are in the right place. What you are about to discover is not about willpower or trying harder. It is about seeing differently, and when you see differently, everything shifts. Not because you are broken and need fixing, but because you are human and deserve to remember what calm feels like. Buddhism shows you the way home. Let me first tell you what Buddhism does not promise. This is more important than you might think. It won't make anxiety disappear forever. It won't build an invisible shield around your nervous system. It won't turn you into someone who never feels stressed, worried, or afraid. And honestly, that is the most liberating news you will hear today. Because what Buddhism actually offers is something far more real, lasting, and infinitely more powerful. Buddhism offers you a completely transformed relationship with anxiety itself. You will still feel the flutter in your chest when uncertainty arrives. You will still notice tension creeping into your shoulders when deadlines loom. You will still experience that electric current of worry when someone you love is hurting. But here's what changes, and this changes everything. Anxiety will no longer be your master. Right now, when anxiety shows up, it is like a wave crashing over you, pulling you under. You get swept away, tumbling in the current, gasping for air, completely at its mercy. But after walking this Buddhist path for a while, something shifts. The waves still come. They always do. But now you know how to surf them. You feel the rise. You adjust your balance. You ride it without drowning. The wave does not own you anymore. This understanding comes from a teaching over 500 years old, yet it speaks directly to our modern exhaustion. It is called the Four Noble Truths. And before your mind thinks it sounds complicated, let me share it the way it was always meant to be understood, as a story about waking up. 26 centuries ago, a young man named Siddhartha lived in a palace. His father, terrified that Siddhartha would become a wandering monk instead of a king, tried to protect him from everything difficult. No sickness was allowed near him. No elderly people crossed his path. Death itself was hidden behind palace walls. Siddhartha lived surrounded by beauty, pleasure, and carefully curated perfection. Does that sound familiar? We do this too, do not we? We scroll past painful posts. We avoid difficult conversations. We stay so busy that we never sit with what is really brewing inside. We build our own palace walls, thinking that if we arrange things perfectly enough, anxiety won't find us there. But here's what happened to Siddhartha. One day, curiosity led him to leave the palace and encounter what Buddhist teachings call the four sights: a sick person, an elderly person, a corpse, and finally, a wandering monk with a peaceful face. In a single afternoon, his carefully constructed reality shattered. He saw that suffering exists. He could not unsee it. And more than that, he realized something that changed the trajectory of his entire life. Avoiding suffering does not make it disappear. It just makes you more fragile when it inevitably arrives. This is the first noble truth. It is not pessimistic, it is compassionate. Dukkha exists. Anxiety, stress, dissatisfaction, that gnawing sense that something's not quite right, these are part of being human. You are not broken because you feel them. You are awake. Siddhartha left everything, the palace, the comfort, the denial, and went searching for a way through. He tried extreme self-denial, nearly starving himself to death. That did not work. He tried intense meditation practices that left him exhausted. That did not work either. And then, sitting under a tree, he stopped trying to fight reality and instead chose to observe it with extraordinary clarity. What he discovered became the second noble truth. Anxiety has a cause. It is not random. It is not punishment. And it is not a character flaw. It arises from tanha. This word means craving. But it is deeper than just wanting things. It is the constant need for life to be different than it is right now. It is the mental argument with reality that never stops. This should not be happening. I should be further along. If only things were different, then I would be okay. That resistance, that pushing and pulling against what is that, is where so much of our suffering gets amplified. But here's where it gets beautiful. The third noble truth says this: suffering can be transformed. Not someday, not in another life, not after you become perfect, but right here, in this very existence, with this very mind, when you stop adding that second layer of struggle, when you stop fighting the waves and learn to move with them, instead something loosens. Space appears, breath returns. And the fourth noble truth is the path itself. The practices we will explore together over the next few hours. Ways of being present, of observing your mind, of returning to your body, of releasing the shoulds that strangle your peace. This is not about becoming someone else. It is about remembering who you are beneath all the noise. When Siddhartha finally stood up from under that tree, he was not someone who never felt discomfort again. He got tired. He experienced physical pain. He faced criticism and betrayal. But his relationship with all of it had fundamentally changed. He was no longer at war with his own experience. And that, my friend, is what is possible for you too. This is medicine for the mind, not magic for the ego. Buddhism won't hand you a life free from challenges. It won't eliminate every uncomfortable feeling. What it will do is teach you how to stop making everything worse. By resisting, avoiding, or believing every catastrophic thought that drifts through your awareness. Over the next few hours, we are going to walk this path together, not as a lecture, but as an exploration. Not as a fix, but as a homecoming. You will hear stories that mirror your own struggles. You will encounter practices so simple they might seem too easy to work until you try them and feel something shift. You will discover that the peace you have been searching for everywhere else has been waiting patiently inside you all along. This is not a one-time miracle cure. You won't finish these hours and never feel anxious again. What you will have is a toolkit, a compass, a way of seeing that makes the next moment of anxiety less overwhelming than the last, and then the next one easier still, and gradually you will realize you are living differently. You will be breathing more deeply. You will be reacting less quickly. You will be present more often. The same life circumstances might still be there, but you will be meeting them from a different place, a place of clarity instead of chaos, of wisdom instead of worry. This is what Buddhism actually offers. Not the elimination of the human experience, but the transformation of your relationship to it. Not a promise that you will never feel anxiety, but a guarantee that anxiety does not have to run your life anymore. And that, my friend, is worth every moment of this journey. So take a breath, settle a little deeper into wherever you are listening from. Let your body soften, even just a fraction, because what comes next might just change everything. There is a disease spreading through modern life, and most of us do not even realize we are infected. It does not show up on medical tests, no doctor will diagnose it, but you feel it every single day. This constant internal pressure to move faster, do more, keep up, never stop. The disease of hurry, and here's what nobody tells you. This rush, this relentless velocity you have normalized, is not just exhausting you, it is feeding your anxiety like oxygen feeds fire. We live in a culture that profits from your exhaustion. Every app is designed to keep you scrolling. Every notification engineered to fragment your attention. Every product promises to save you time, so you can fill that time with more tasks, more productivity, more doing. The algorithm knows exactly how to keep you hooked, distracted, perpetually unsatisfied. You are not imagining it. The speed has been weaponized, and your nervous system is paying the price. Think about your morning. You probably woke to an alarm that jolted you from sleep, immediately reached for your phone before your eyes fully opened, scrolled through messages and news while still in bed, then rushed through a shower, grabbed whatever food was quickest, checked email while drinking coffee, mentally rehearsed your day while brushing your teeth, and you were already tired before you even left the house. This is what I mean by the disease of hurry. You are racing before the race even begins. Because here's what is happening inside you when you rush. Your body cannot tell the difference between running from a tiger and running to a meeting. Biologically, urgency is urgency. Threat is threat. So, when you live in constant hurry, checking your phone while eating breakfast, thinking about tonight's dinner while you are still at lunch, rehearsing tomorrow's presentation while trying to fall asleep, your nervous system stays locked in survival mode. Your heart rate elevates. Cortisol floods your bloodstream. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your muscles tense. Your digestion slows down because your body thinks you need all available energy for running or fighting. And your mind, sensing danger, starts scanning for threats that are not there. This is how chronic anxiety takes root. Not because something terrible is happening, but because you have taught your body that everything is urgent. Everything matters. Everything needs to be done right now. The sympathetic nervous system, your fight-or-flight response, was designed for short bursts. See danger, respond, return to baseline. But when you are rushing from the moment you wake until you collapse at night, that system never gets to reset. You are running on stress hormones all day long, and your body starts to believe this is normal. This becomes your baseline. No wonder you are exhausted. No wonder you can't relax, even when you have time to rest. Your nervous system has forgotten what safety feels like. The Buddha said something 2,500 years ago that cuts right through this madness. The trouble is, you think you have time. At first, this sounds paradoxical, does not it? We rush because we think we do not have time. But look deeper. We rush because we believe there will be a moment someday later, eventually, when we can finally rest, finally be present, finally feel okay. We are constantly trading this moment for an imaginary future moment when things will be better, calmer, more complete. After this project is done, then I will relax. After I get that promotion, then I will slow down. After the kids are older, after I have more money, after everything falls into place, then I will finally be able to breathe. But that moment never arrives because you keep pushing it forward. The goalpost keeps moving, and you keep running toward a finish line that does not exist.
Let me share a story that changed how I understand this. There was a Zen monk in Japan who lived near a busy train station in Tokyo, one of the most chaotic intersections of humanity you can
imagine. Thousands of people rushing in every direction,
announcements blaring, the roar of trains arriving and departing every few minutes, the constant surge of urgency, salary workers rushing to not be late, tourists frantically consulting maps, everyone moving as if their life depended on speed. A Western journalist visited this monk and asked him, "How can you possibly meditate here? How can you find peace in the middle of all this chaos?"
"Do not you want to live somewhere quieter?" The monk smiled. He said,
"I do not try to find peace despite the chaos. I simply walk slowly." The journalist looked confused. Slowly. That is the secret. And then the monk demonstrated, while everyone around him rushed past.
Briefcases swinging, faces tight with stress, bodies leaning forward as if perpetually late, eyes glued to phones.
This monk walked through the station with such deliberate slowness that people parted around him like water around a stone, each step conscious, grounded, complete, before the next one began, each breath intentional, full, unhurried. Not because he had nowhere to be,
but because he understood something most of us have forgotten.
Speed is a choice, and so is presence. The journalist watched, mesmerized. He noticed something remarkable, while everyone else looked stressed. Tight, disconnected, the monk's face was completely relaxed.
His shoulders were soft, his breathing was visible, steady, deep, and there was something in his eyes, a clarity, an aliveness that everyone rushing past him had lost somewhere along the way.
That monk was practicing something Buddhism calls samatha, the art of calming the mind, not by escaping to a quiet mountaintop, but by choosing stillness within movement, by refusing to let the world's velocity become his velocity. And here's what is beautiful. When you stop running, even for a moment, your mind begins to settle naturally. Like muddy water left undisturbed, clarity returns on its own. You do not have to fight for calm. You do not have to manufacture peace through force of will.
You just have to stop fighting against this moment. But our culture tells you the opposite, does not. It tells you that slowing down is laziness.
That rest is something you earn only after you have exhausted yourself.
That presence is a luxury you can't afford when there is so much to do. That if you are not busy, you are not valuable. And so you keep running through breakfast, through conversations, through your own life, always arriving but never really there. I want you to understand something crucial. This is not your fault. You did not create this culture of speed. You were born into it. You were trained for it from childhood. From the moment you entered school, you were taught that faster equals better.
That efficiency equals worth. That your value is measured by your output. Gold stars for finishing first. Praise for never stopping. Admiration for those who sacrifice sleep. And sanity for productivity. No wonder you are exhausted. No wonder anxiety feels like a permanent resident in your chest.
But here's the revolutionary truth Buddhism offers. Slowness is not weakness. Slowness is power. When you choose to slow down, you are not being lazy or unproductive or falling behind. You are reclaiming your nervous system from a culture that wants it dysregulated, wants you too scattered to question, too tired to resist. You are telling your body, we are safe. There is no tiger chasing us. This moment right here is enough. And your body listens. It begins to exhale. Shoulders drop. Jaw unclenches. Breathing deepens, heart rate slows, the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest mode finally gets permission to come online.
And in that softening, anxiety loses its grip, because anxiety needs urgency to survive. When you refuse to rush, you pull the oxygen away from the fire.
This does not mean you stop being responsible or productive. It means you stop conflating speed with effectiveness, because the truth is, when you slow down, when you bring full presence to one thing at a time, you actually become more capable, more creative, more clear. You are not scattering your energy across 17 half-done tasks. You are focusing it, concentrating it, making it matter. Think about the last time you rushed through a meal. Did you even taste it? Or was it just fuel mechanically consumed while your mind was already 3 steps ahead?
Or the last conversation you had while checking your phone. Did you really hear what the other person was saying? Or that project you hurried through just to check it off your list? Did you feel any satisfaction or just immediate pressure to move on to the next thing? This is what hurry steals from you. Not time, but life itself.
The texture of it, the taste of it, the feeling of actually being here for your own existence. The practice begins with awareness. Start noticing when you are rushing, not to judge yourself, but simply to see it. Feel your body leaning forward, always ahead of itself. Notice your breath getting shallow, trapped high in your chest. Observe your mind already 3 steps ahead of where your feet actually are. And in that noticing, you create a gap, a tiny space between the habit and your response to it.
The habit says, rush. But in the gap, you have a choice. You can keep running, or you can take one breath and slow down. Just one breath. That is all it takes to begin reclaiming your time.
Reclaiming your nervous system. Reclaiming your life from the tyranny of speed. The monk in Tokyo Station understood this. He did not need the world to slow down for him to find peace. He did not wait for perfect conditions or a quieter life. He simply refused to let the world's panic become his panic. And you can do this too, right where you are, right in the middle of your complicated, full, demanding life. You can choose slowness, and in doing so, you choose sanity. You choose presence. You choose yourself. Now, let us talk about what it actually means to be present. Because this is where everything shifts, the present moment. You have heard this phrase 1,000 times. Have not you, it has become almost cliché in wellness circles. Be here now, they say, as if it is obvious, as if you are not already here. But the truth is, most of us spend almost no time in the actual present. Your body is here, yes, sitting or standing or lying down, physically occupying this space. But where is your mind? It is replaying yesterday's conversation, analyzing what you should have said differently. It is rehearsing tomorrow's meeting, scripting responses to questions that have not been asked yet. It is planning next week, next month, 5 years from now, constructing elaborate scenarios about a future that may never arrive, or it is lost in fantasy, in worry, in stories about who you should be and what you should have done. Meanwhile, this moment, the only moment you actually have, the only moment that is real, is passing you by completely unnoticed. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen master who brought mindfulness to the West, used to teach his students about presence through something beautifully simple, eating an orange. He would sit in front of a group holding a single orange in his hands, not doing anything with it at first, just holding it, feeling its weight, its texture. He would turn it slowly, examining its skin, the tiny dimples and variations in color. Then he would bring it close to his face and smell it. He would breathe in the bright citrus scent deeply, savoring it. His students would watch, some confused, others impatient, wondering when the lesson would begin.
But the lesson had already begun. Then he would peel the orange slowly, almost ceremoniously, noticing the spray of oils as his thumbnail pierced the skin, feeling the way the rind released from the fruit, hearing the soft, tearing sound.
He was teaching them, not with words, but with every step of this simple action, how to be fully present, how to be awake to the moment, how to experience life, not as a rush to the next thing, but as a series of small, intentional, lived moments. As he ate the orange, he was not thinking about the next thing, or even the past thing. He was simply there, with the orange, with the experience of eating it, fully aware.
This is the art of mindfulness, the ability to be here, fully here, in whatever you are doing, whether you are eating, walking, talking, or even just breathing.
We often talk about being present as if it is something hard to attain, but the truth is, presence is already within you. You do not need to go searching for it.
You just need to stop running from it.
The next time you are sitting down to eat, take a moment. Feel the weight of the food in your hands. Notice the textures, the colors, the smells. And when you take a bite, do not rush. Taste it. Really taste it. Let the experience wash over you. Do not let your mind wander to what is next,
to what you have to do, or what you have already done. Just be there, with your food, with your body, with your breath.
This practice of mindfulness can be applied to anything you do. It is not about eliminating all the noise or distractions in your life, but about learning to find peace amidst it all.
To be fully present, no matter what is going on around you. And as you practice this, you will find that the world begins to slow down. You will become more grounded,
more centered, more at ease. Now, think about the last time you rushed through something. Maybe it was a task at work, a conversation with someone you care about, or even just a moment of quiet in your day.
Did you fully experience it, or did you rush through it, thinking about the next thing, the next task, the next moment? The truth is, when we rush,
we miss out on life itself. We lose the texture, the depth, the meaning of the present moment. But when you slow down,
when you choose to be fully present, the world opens up. You begin to notice things you missed before. The small details, the little moments of beauty.
The peace that has always been there, just waiting for you to notice it. This is not about perfection. It is not about suddenly becoming a superhuman of mindfulness, capable of being present 100% of the time. It is about progress, about showing up again and again to the present moment, even when it feels difficult or when the world around you seems to be speeding up. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
The more you become accustomed to slowing down, to being fully here, to finding peace in the midst of chaos.
And as you practice mindfulness, you will find that anxiety does not have the same grip on you. The urgency that once dictated your life begins to loosen. You will still experience stress. You will still feel anxious from time to time. But now, you will have the tools to meet those feelings with calm,
with presence, with a sense of grounding that you did not have before. This, my friend, is the essence of what Buddhism teaches. Not a life free of struggle or discomfort, but a life where you are no longer at war with your experience.
A life where you can sit with discomfort,
with anxiety, with uncertainty, without allowing them to control you. A life where you can face the chaos of the world, not by fighting it, but by simply choosing to slow down, to breathe, and to be present.
And when you do that, when you choose slowness, when you choose presence, you reclaim your life. You stop letting the world dictate your pace.
Your thoughts, your actions. You start living on your own terms,
In your own time.
So, take a deep breath. Let the world keep rushing. Let the demands keep piling up. You do not have to meet them all right now. You can choose to slow down, to be present, to find peace right here in this moment. Because in the end, this moment is all you really have.
He would carefully separate each segment, arranging them like petals. When he finally ate it, he would take one segment at a time, chewing slowly, savoring the sweetness, the slight tartness, and the burst of juice. It would take him 15 minutes to eat a single orange. His students observed, initially thinking this was some kind of endurance test. Why did he make such a ceremony out of eating an orange? They had things to do, places to be. But then, he would explain, and everything would shift. When you eat an orange while thinking about your bills,
He would say, you are not really eating the orange. You are eating your bills. You are consuming worry along with a side of citrus. When you eat while planning tomorrow, scrolling through your phone, or watching television, you are not tasting anything. You are just refueling mechanically.
disconnected. But when you eat an orange with your full attention, something sacred happens. You are alive. You are here. You are experiencing the miracle of taste, of nourishment, of this fruit that grew on a tree somewhere, under sunlight and rain, traveled across distances to reach you, and is now becoming part of your body. That is not a small thing. That is life fully lived. This is what the present moment means. Not some mystical state you must achieve through years of meditation. Not some impossible standard of never having a wandering thought. Just being where you are, doing what you are doing, without your mind splitting into 100 different directions. Buddhism calls this sati, often translated as mindfulness. But the word actually means something closer to remembering. Remembering to come back. Remembering that life is happening right now, not in the story you are telling yourself about the past or the future. Your mind will wander. That is not a problem. That is not failure. The human mind is designed to wander. It is how we plan, imagine, learn from the past, and prepare for the future. The practice is not about achieving some perfect state of constant presence. That is impossible. And that is not even the point. The practice is noticing when you have drifted and gently, without judgment, bringing yourself back again and again. That is the whole practice. Think of it like training a puppy. The puppy wanders off, and you do not scold it or shame it. You simply guide it back.
Over and over. Eventually, the puppy learns. Your mind is the same way. It needs patient, compassionate training, not harsh criticism. And here's why this is so crucial for anxiety.
Anxiety cannot exist in the present moment. Really think about this. Anxiety is always about something that has not happened yet, or something that already happened. What if I fail this presentation? What if they do not like me? What if I lose my job, my health, my security? Or it is replaying past mistakes, past humiliations, building evidence for why you should be worried right now. But if you bring your full attention to this exact moment,
Not the next breath, not the last one, but this one right here. Where is the anxiety in this moment? Are you breathing? Yes. In this moment.
are you safe? Most likely, yes. In this moment, is anything terrible actually happening? Usually, the answer is no. The present moment is almost always okay. It is your thoughts about the future or the past that create suffering. Let us do something together right now, not later, not after you finish listening to this section. Right now, take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs completely, and let it out slowly through your mouth. Another deep breath in, full and deep. And release, letting everything soften. One more. Breathe in deeply, feeling your chest and belly expand. And let it go slowly, releasing any tension you are holding. Now, take 2 more breaths at your own pace, your own rhythm. Notice, in those 5 breaths, where was your anxiety? Where was your worry about tomorrow or regret about yesterday? When you brought your full attention to just breathing, just being here, the mental noise probably quieted, even if only for a moment. That is the power of presence. That is what is available to you always. In any moment, you can choose to return. This is not about becoming some enlightened being who never worries. It is about having a refuge you can return to when the mind starts spiraling. When anxiety begins building its catastrophic scenarios, your breath has been with you since the moment you were born, and it will be with you until your last moment. It is the most faithful companion you have, and when you anchor your attention there, even briefly, you step out of the time machine of anxiety and land back in the only time that is real. Why could this alone transform everything? Because anxiety feeds on your absence. Every moment you spend lost in thought, ruminating on what might happen or what did happen. Your anxiety grows stronger. But every moment you spend actually present, anxiety loses fuel. It is like a fire that needs your attention, your worry, your mental participation to keep burning. When you stop feeding it with catastrophic thinking and future tripping, it begins to die down naturally. You do not have to fight it. You do not have to positive think your way out of it. You do not have to be strong, perfect, or somehow transcendent. You just have to be here. Fully, completely here. But I know what you are thinking right now. This sounds beautiful, but I have a demanding job. Kids who need me. Bills that won't pay themselves. Responsibilities that do not pause just because I want to be present. I do not have time for 15-minute orange meditations or hours of sitting in silence. And you are absolutely right, which is why this final piece is so important. You do not need to quit your job, move to the mountains, or become a monk. You do not need to overhaul your entire life or abandon your responsibilities. Breaking the speed addiction, learning to live with presence instead of pressure, starts with something so small it might seem insignificant. Sacred pauses. These are tiny moments of intentional slowness planted throughout your day, like seeds in soil. Small acts of presence that interrupt the automation of rushing. Before you eat, pause for 3 seconds. Look at your food. Notice its colors and textures. Take one conscious breath before you open the door to your home. Pause. Let work fall away. Let your shoulders drop. Cross the threshold with awareness before you speak, especially when you feel reactive or defensive. Pause. Feel the words forming. Choose them consciously, rather than reacting from habit. These pauses are rebellion. Small, quiet acts of defiance against a culture that wants you running on empty, too scattered to notice what has been stolen from you. There is a story about a corporate executive, let us call her Sarah, who discovered this practice during one of the hardest periods of her life. She was working 80-hour weeks at a tech company, managing a team of 30 people, barely sleeping, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. Anxiety was her constant companion. Her jaw ached from clenching. Her stomach was always tight. She could not remember the last time she had taken a full breath. One evening, after another brutal 14-hour day, she sat in her car in the parking garage and realized something that stopped her cold. She could not remember the drive to work that morning. She could not remember eating lunch, though her desk had an empty container on it. She could not remember a single conversation she would had that day with any real presence. She was living, but she was not there for it. She was like a ghost in her own life, moving through the motions while completely absent from the experience. That night, sitting in her car, something cracked open. She started crying. Not the pretty kind of crying, but the kind that shakes your whole body. The kind that has been building for months and finally breaks through.
And in that breaking, she made a deal with herself. Every day before getting out of her car, whether arriving at work or coming home, she would sit for exactly 1 minute.
Not checking her phone, not planning her next move,
not rehearsing conversations.
Just sitting, breathing, noticing where she was, how she felt, what she needed. 1 minute. 60 seconds. She said it felt ridiculous at first. Even indulgent. The first few days, her mind screamed at her to hurry up, get moving, stop being lazy. But she stayed with it, and within 2 weeks, something shifted. That 1 minute of pause began changing the other one, 339 minutes of her day. She started noticing when she was rushing unnecessarily,
when urgency was just habit rather than reality. She began actually hearing her children when they spoke to her after work. She found herself taking full breaths throughout the day.
Her anxiety did not disappear. She still had hard days, overwhelming moments, but its grip loosened because she would created a practice of returning to herself, of coming back to presence again and again. That is what sacred pauses do.
They interrupt the automation, the mindless rushing from one thing to the next without ever actually arriving anywhere. They remind you that you are not a machine programmed for productivity.
You are a human being, and being requires presence. Start with one. Choose one transition in your day. Waking up, starting work, coming home, eating a meal, going to bed, and build in a 5-second pause. Just 5 seconds of being,
breathing, arriving where you are. It won't feel like much. Your mind will probably resist, call it silly, tell you there are more important things to do. But these small rebellions accumulate. They create cracks in the armor of speed, letting light in. And through those cracks, your life starts seeping back in. The life you have been too busy to notice.
The moments you have been too rushed to experience.
Before we move forward, let us check in together. This is itself a sacred pause. How do you feel right now in this moment? Not how you felt when you started listening.
If you felt the shift, if you noticed the breath or the pause in time, you have already begun. That is the power of presence. It is the choice to be here. In this moment, not lost in thought or caught in anxiety, this practice does not ask for perfection.
It simply asks for your presence. And that, my friend, is the key to transformation.
Not how you think you will feel later. Right now, is your breathing easier than when you began? Has your body softened even slightly? Are your thoughts moving a little slower? Or maybe nothing has changed yet, and that is okay too. Do not judge what you find. Just notice, because this noticing, this gentle awareness of your present moment experience, this is the practice itself. You are doing it right now. You are here. And that is enough. We have walked through the first gate together, the gate of reclaiming time, not by finding more hours in the day, but by actually inhabiting the hours you have, by choosing slowness when the world demands speed, by returning to presence when your mind wanders into the past or future,
by planting small moments of pause in the soil of your ordinary days. This is how you begin to shift your relationship with anxiety.
not by conquering it through force, but by removing the conditions that let it thrive. Hurry feeds anxiety. Absence feeds anxiety. Constant doing, without any space for simply being, feeds anxiety. So you slow down. You come back to now. You pause. You breathe. And gradually, breath by breath, moment by moment, you remember what it feels like to be alive. Not just productive, not just busy, not just surviving, but genuinely, fully alive. That remembering is the medicine, and you have already begun taking it. There is something you need to understand about your mind. Something that might initially feel unsettling, but ultimately becomes the most liberating truth you will ever encounter. Your mind is not your master. Right now, as you listen to these words, your mind is probably doing what it always does. Commenting,
Analyzing, agreeing or disagreeing, drifting to something you need to do later, replaying something from earlier today. It is like a radio that never turns off. A constant stream of thoughts, judgments, stories, worries, and plans. And somewhere along the way, you learn to believe that this voice in your head is you, but it is not. The Buddha taught something 500 years ago that modern neuroscience is only now confirming. The untrained mind is like a drunken monkey. No, really, that is the actual teaching. A drunken monkey that has been stung by a bee, leaping wildly from branch to branch, never settling.
Always agitated, constantly seeking the next thing to grab onto. This monkey mind jumps from thought to thought without any conscious direction from you.
One moment, you are thinking about what to make for dinner.
The next moment, you are remembering something embarrassing you said in 3rd grade. Then suddenly, you are catastrophizing about your job security. Then wondering if you left the stove on. Then judging yourself for not being more present. Then worrying about that judgment. Then thinking about thinking. And here's what makes it so exhausting. You believe all of it. Every thought that appears in your awareness, you take as truth. Every worry, every judgment, every catastrophic prediction, you treat them as facts rather than what they actually are. Mental events, temporary appearances in consciousness that have no more inherent reality than clouds in the sky. This is where so much of your anxiety comes from. Not from what is actually happening in your life, but from believing the stories your untrained mind is constantly generating. Your mind is like an overprotective parent who sees danger everywhere, a director constantly creating disaster movies in your imagination.
A lawyer building cases against you based on evidence that does not exist yet. Let me share a story that illustrates this beautifully. A classic Zen teaching that has survived centuries because it
cuts so directly to the truth. 2 monks were walking together on a journey, an older monk and a younger one. They came to a river crossing where the water was high and the current strong. Standing at the bank was a young woman in expensive silk robes, clearly distressed because she could not cross without ruining her clothes and possibly being swept away by the current. The older monk, without saying a word, picked her up, carried her across the river on his back, set her down gently on the other side, bowed to her, and continued walking. The younger monk was shocked, completely speechless. In their tradition, monks were not supposed to touch women, especially not young, beautiful women. But he said nothing, just followed his teacher in silence, his mind churning. They walked for hours.
Mile after mile, the younger monk's mind created an entire drama around those 2 minutes at the river. How could his teacher break the rules like that? What would the other monks say if they found out? Had his teacher lost his way? Was this a test of the young monk's loyalty? Should he report this? Was he complicit in the transgression just by witnessing it? The thoughts spun and spun, each one leading to another. building into a storm of judgment, confusion, righteousness, and doubt.
Finally, after hours of this internal torment, unable to contain himself any longer, the young monk burst out. "How could you carry that woman? You know, we are not supposed to touch women. You have broken our vows. I can't believe you did that." The older monk looked at him with gentle, amused eyes and said, "I put her down hours ago at the river. Why are you still carrying her?" This story cuts to the heart of how the mind works, how suffering is created not by events themselves, but by what we do with them in our thoughts. The event itself, carrying the woman across the river, took maybe 2 minutes, maybe even less. But the younger monk carried the story about that event, the judgment about it, the anxiety about it, the entire mental drama, for hours. He tortured himself, not with reality, but with his thoughts about reality. And here's what makes this teaching so powerful. The older monk was not less aware or less thoughtful. He simply understood something the younger monk had not learned yet. He knew that thoughts are not commands,
That rules serve compassion rather than replace it, and that every moment offers a choice. Carry the story or put it down. This is what your mind does all day long, every single day. It picks things up, worries, judgments, resentments,
fears, old conversations, anticipated disasters, and carries them for hours, days, sometimes years, long after the actual moment has passed.
And you, like the young monk,
Do not realize you have the power to put them down. The Buddha said in the Dharmapada, one of the oldest and most beloved Buddhist texts, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts."
With our thoughts, we make the world. This is not just beautiful poetry. It is pointing to something profound about how suffering is created and how freedom is found.
Your thoughts literally construct your experience of reality.
Two people can be in the exact same situation, sitting in traffic, for example, and one is peaceful while the other is consumed with rage.
Why? Not because of the traffic itself, not because one has a better car or more time, but because of their thoughts about the traffic. One person thinks, "This is terrible. I am going to be late. Everyone will judge me. This always happens to me. Why is life so unfair? I should have left earlier. Why are these people such terrible drivers?" The other thinks, "Well, here we are. Nothing I can do about it right now. Might as well take some breaths and listen to music. Maybe I will arrive a few minutes late, and that is okay."
Same traffic, same delay, completely different experience. This is why understanding the nature of thought is so crucial for freeing yourself from anxiety. Because once you really see, that your thoughts are not facts, that they are just mental events, just appearances in consciousness, everything changes. Thoughts are like visitors knocking on your door. You do not have to invite them in for dinner. You do not have to let them move in and redecorate your house.
You do not have to believe everything they say or follow every suggestion they make. You can acknowledge them.
Oh, there is a worried thought. There is a judgment.
There is a catastrophic prediction. And let them move on without building your whole day around them. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps and went on to develop logotherapy, said something that echoes this Buddhist wisdom perfectly. Between stimulus and response, there is a space.
In that space is our power to choose our response.
In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space, that tiny gap between a thought appearing and you believing it, between a worry arising and you getting swept away by it, between an impulse and an action. That is where your freedom lives. And the beautiful thing is you can learn to widen that space. You can train your mind to pause, to observe, to choose, rather than automatically react. This is what we are going to explore now. How to observe your mind without being controlled by it.
Buddhism calls this vipassana, which translates to clear seeing or insight. It is the practice of watching your thoughts without becoming them. Observing your mind without being swept away by every mental current that flows through. Imagine your mind is the sky. Throughout the day, all kinds of weather pass through. Clouds, storms, sunshine, fog, rain, snow, wind. Sometimes the weather is gentle and pleasant, warm sunlight and soft breezes. Sometimes it is harsh and difficult, dark thunderstorms and cold winds. But here's what never changes: the sky itself. The sky does not fight the clouds. It does not say, "I should not have clouds today. This is terrible. I need to make the clouds go away. I should be better at keeping clouds out." It simply holds them, allows them, provides space for them to move through. And no matter how dark the storm gets, no matter how violent the weather becomes, the sky is never actually damaged by it. It remains vast, open, and clear, regardless of the passing clouds. This is how your mind can be. Thoughts, like clouds, come and go, but you can choose to simply observe them without getting caught up in them. Without letting them define you or your experience, the sky does not identify with the storm, and neither should you identify with the thoughts that pass through your mind. The practice of observing your thoughts without attachment is liberating because it breaks the cycle of automatic reactions. When you start to notice your thoughts, you create a space between stimulus and response, a space where you can decide how to engage with what is happening in your mind. In that space, you can choose to not be swept away by the mental storms that often cause anxiety and suffering. It is important to remember that you do not have to stop your thoughts or try to force them away. Just as the sky does not try to stop the weather, you do not have to resist your thoughts. Simply notice them. Watch them as they arise and fade. Over time, you will find that they have less power over you because you are no longer feeding them with your attention and judgment. This is not an easy task, and it is something that requires consistent practice. Your mind has been conditioned for years to react to thoughts, to believe that everything it thinks is true, that every worry is justified, every judgment is correct. But the more you practice mindfulness, the more you begin to realize that thoughts are just thoughts. They are not the truth. They are just mental events, impermanent and fleeting. As you develop this ability to observe your thoughts, you will begin to experience more peace in your life. You will begin to understand that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes them. And with this understanding comes freedom. You no longer have to be at the mercy of your mind. You can choose where to direct your attention, and you can choose to live with more presence, more awareness, and more peace. It may take time, but the more you practice, the more natural it becomes to stay anchored in the present moment. You will find yourself less caught up in worries about the future or regrets about the past. You will be able to meet each moment as it comes, with an open heart and a clear mind. Remember, you do not need to be perfect. This practice is not about being free of all thoughts or emotions. It is about developing the ability to choose how to respond to them. It is about being able to step back and see the bigger picture that your thoughts are not who you are. And in that space of awareness, you will find peace, clarity, and freedom. As you continue on this journey, keep in mind that every moment offers an opportunity to practice. Every breath, every step, every interaction is a chance to return to presence. The more you practice, the more natural it will become to be fully present in each moment, and with that presence
comes the realization that you are already whole, already complete. So take a moment now, wherever you are, to pause and notice your thoughts. Do not judge them. Do not try to change them. Just observe. And in that simple act of observation, you are already beginning to break free from the grip of your mind. You are already beginning to return to the peace that is always available to you. Right here, right now, in time, you will find that anxiety has less power over you. It will still come, of course, but when it does, you will be able to meet it with presence. You won't get swept away by the thoughts and worries that feed it. You will remember that you are not your anxiety, and you have the power to let it pass through you, just like the clouds passing through the sky. This is the freedom that mindfulness offers, the freedom to be present, to be aware, and to live fully in each moment. And in that presence, you will find the peace you seek, the peace that is always available to you, waiting for you to return to it. When the storm moves on, the sky does not disappear with it. It remains wide, open, untouched. In the same way, you are like that sky. Thoughts, emotions, worries, fears, joys, and grief are more like shifting weather patterns. They arise, they grow stronger, they swirl with intensity,
and eventually they fade. What stays constant is the awareness noticing all of it, the field of consciousness in which every experience unfolds.
That witnessing presence does not come and go with the storms. This understanding is among the most radical insights found in Buddhist teaching. You are not identical to your thoughts. You are the space that allows thoughts to appear.
You are not the turbulence. You are the openness that contains it. When you rest in this recognition, even briefly, anxiety begins to lose its authority.
It no longer feels like an unchangeable truth. It starts to register as a passing condition. You may notice the anxiety feels overwhelming in the moment. It seems urgent, convincing, undeniable, yet it is still only a mental storm moving through. It is not your identity. It is not permanent. It does not define you. It will pass. From this understanding comes a very practical approach you can use immediately. The next time anxiety begins to build in your body and mind, the next time a troubling thought appears, stop for a moment and pose a single question to yourself.
Is this a fact, or is this a story my mind is creating?
Consider a situation many people know well. You have a job interview coming up. The instant you think about it, your mind accelerates. You imagine yourself failing. You recall past mistakes. You tell yourself you never say the right things. You picture difficult questions you cannot answer.
You imagine the interviewers seeing through you, judging you, concluding you are unqualified. You anticipate shaking hands, a quivering voice.
Harsh evaluations. Soon the narrative expands far beyond the interview itself. You imagine not getting the job, never finding a good one,
ending up alone and struggling. This is how the spiral works.
One thought triggers the next, each more catastrophic than the last. Before long, you are no longer dealing with interview nerves. You are convinced your entire future is collapsing. Everything you fear seems inevitable.
At that point, pause. Take a breath. Return to the question, fact or story.
The fact is that you have an interview scheduled. The idea that you will fail is a story. The fact is that you feel nervous right now. The belief that nervousness guarantees failure is a story. The fact is that you do not know the questions yet. The assumption that you will be unable to answer them is a story. The fact is that this opportunity matters to you.
The claim that your entire life hinges on this single event is a story. Facts are what can be verified in the present moment. Stories are mental constructions about what might happen in the future. They are often fueled by fear, by old memories that no longer apply, or by extreme scenarios that are unlikely to occur. The mind excels at presenting these stories with confidence. They arrive with a sense of certainty that makes them feel like objective reality. A thought such as, "I am going to fail," can appear so forcefully that your body reacts as though failure has already occurred. Your heart speeds up. Your stomach tightens. Your muscles tense. When you learn to separate facts from stories,
You introduce space into this process. You no longer have to accept every thought simply because it sounds convincing.
you can recognize what is happening. You can note that your mind is producing a fear-based narrative without treating it as a prediction.
This shift can be life-changing. I once knew a student who encountered this insight in a deeply personal way.
Her name was Maria. Anxiety had been with her for as long as she could remember. It was always present, always commenting, always warning her that she was inadequate, that danger was near, that constant vigilance was necessary to prevent disaster.
Worry felt like a permanent feature of her personality. She turned to meditation with the hope that it would erase her anxiety completely. She wanted it gone, cured, eliminated. In the beginning, she felt discouraged. The anxiety did not vanish. If anything, meditation made her more aware of how constant her anxious thinking really was. She felt as though things were getting worse because she could no longer distract herself from the noise.
Then something subtle changed. During one meditation session, the familiar sensations appeared. Tightness in her chest, rapid thoughts, an inner voice insisting that something was wrong and that
She needed to act immediately. This time, however, she noticed something different. Instead of being fully absorbed by the anxiety, she became aware of herself thinking, "I am anxious."
that realization stopped her. If she could hear the thought saying she was anxious, then who was listening? Who was aware of that voice in that moment?
She touched a truth that has been taught for centuries. There is an aspect of you that can observe anxiety without being swallowed by it. You can experience fear and simultaneously know that fear is present. That knowing awareness is not the same as the anxiety. Maria described it with an image that stayed with me. She said it was as if she had spent her whole life drowning in the ocean, believing she was the waves themselves. Suddenly, she realized she could also be on the shore, watching the waves rise and crash. The waves did not disappear. They were still powerful. But she was no longer only inside them. Part of her was safely observing. This is clear seeing. It is available at any moment. One effective way to cultivate this capacity is a practice often called noting or labeling.
It is very simple. When you notice the mind doing something, you quietly name it: thinking, worrying, planning, judging, remembering.
You are not trying to stop thoughts. That effort only creates more strain. You are acknowledging what is happening. You are giving it a name. This creates a small gap between you and the mental activity. Like someone observing wildlife, you simply note what appears. A thought arises. You label it. Listening, wondering, doubting, analyzing. This gentle naming creates distance. Nothing is pushed away. Nothing is condemned. You are watching thoughts the way you might watch clouds drift or leaves float downstream. This works because it engages the observing aspect of the mind rather than the reactive one. When you notice and label worry, you are no longer fully inside it. You are relating to it from a slight remove. In that space, the thought begins to lose some of its intensity. It is still present, but it is no longer the entirety of your experience. It becomes one event among many, one passing formation within a much larger field. This is how distance is created without suppression, how space appears without resistance. You are no longer telling yourself that these thoughts should not exist, or that you are wrong for having them. That kind of struggle only adds more suffering. Instead, you acknowledge what is happening. You recognize anxiety as a temporary condition moving through awareness. You see it without surrendering to it. It is like observing rain from indoors rather than standing unprotected in the storm. The same weather exists, but the relationship to it has changed completely.
The sky is never harmed by the weather it holds. You can learn to relate to your inner experience in the same way. The next challenge arises when the most difficult thoughts appear.
The ones charged with fear and urgency, the ones that demand immediate belief and reaction. Anxiety will still arise. Fearful thinking will still occur. That is part of having a human nervous system designed to anticipate danger. The question is not how to eliminate these thoughts forever, but how you meet them when they arise. Most people respond to those moments by going to war with their own mind. They argue with the fear, try to overpower it, shame themselves for feeling anxious, demand that it stop immediately. Do not worry. Calm down. Be rational. Think positive. These commands are usually delivered with frustration and urgency, as if the mind were an enemy that must be subdued. But this approach rarely works. More often, it intensifies the struggle. Anxiety feeds on resistance. The more you fight it, the more entrenched it becomes. When fear appears, the nervous system is already activated. Adrenaline is flowing.
The body believes there is a threat. Trying to reason your way out at that stage is like shouting instructions at someone who is already running at full speed.
The system does not respond to force. What it responds to is safety. And safety is communicated not through argument, but through presence. This is where allowing comes in. Allowing does not mean liking the anxiety or agreeing with its message. It does not mean giving up or resigning yourself to suffering. It means letting the sensations and thoughts be there without adding another layer of struggle on top of them. It means recognizing this is what is happening right now, and I can meet it with awareness instead of resistance. When a fearful thought arises, you can notice it as a mental event. You can feel the bodily sensations that accompany it. Tightness, heat, pressure, restlessness. Instead of trying to push those sensations away, you let them be felt. You breathe. You stay present. You allow the experience to move through awareness like weather through the sky. This is counterintuitive for many people. The instinct is to escape discomfort as quickly as possible. But paradoxically, it is the attempt to escape that often keeps anxiety locked in place. When you stop fighting, the nervous system receives a different signal. There is no immediate danger. There is space. There is permission for the experience to complete itself.
Fear is energy in motion. When it is allowed, it moves. When it is resisted, it stagnates. By staying present with it, you give it the opportunity to rise and fall naturally.
This does not mean the anxiety disappears instantly. Sometimes it stays for a while. But it changes. It becomes less solid, less threatening, less personal. You begin to see that anxiety is not a single monolithic force. It is a collection of sensations, images, and thoughts, arising and dissolving moment by moment.
When you observe it closely, its apparent power begins to soften. It is no longer an overwhelming enemy. It is an experience unfolding in awareness.
Another helpful shift is to bring kindness into the picture. Anxiety often comes with self-judgment. Why am I like this? What is wrong with me? Other people can handle this. I should be stronger. These thoughts add another layer of suffering. They turn a difficult experience into a personal failure. Instead, you can recognize that anxiety is a human response. It is part of the brain's attempt to protect you. Even when it is misguided or excessive, its intention is survival. When you see this, a different attitude becomes possible. You can meet anxiety the way you might meet a frightened child. With patience, with understanding, with care. You might silently say to yourself, I see that you are scared. It is okay to feel this way. You do not need to go anywhere right now. This kind of inner response can be profoundly regulating. It shifts the system from threat to connection, from isolation to support.
As you practice this way of relating to your inner experience, something important begins to change. You stop identifying so completely with every thought and feeling.
You start to recognize yourself as the awareness in which they arise. The storms still come, but they no longer define the sky.
Over time, you may notice that anxious thoughts still appear, but they have less influence over your behavior.
You may still feel nervous before an interview, before a conversation, before a decision, but nervousness no longer automatically turns into catastrophe. It becomes information rather than a verdict. You also begin to trust your capacity to be with discomfort. You learn, through direct experience, that you can survive anxious moments without needing to fix them immediately. This builds confidence at a deeper level than positive thinking ever could. It is not based on controlling the future, but on trusting your presence in the present.
This does not mean life becomes free of challenges. It means you relate to challenges differently. You respond rather than react. You observe rather than collapse. You allow rather than fight. In this way, awareness itself becomes a refuge. There will be times when anxiety feels overwhelming again. That is not a failure.
It is simply another wave. Each time you notice, each time you return to observing, labeling, allowing, you strengthen this capacity. It is a skill that develops through repetition, not perfection. The mind may continue to generate fearful stories, that is its habit. But you do not have to live inside those stories. You can recognize them as stories.
You can come back to what is actually here. Breath,
Sensation, sound, presence.
Gradually, the sense of being at the mercy of your thoughts begins to loosen. You discover that peace is not something you achieve by eliminating anxiety.
It is something you access by changing your relationship to it. The sky does not need to control the weather to remain vast. It simply allows it to pass. And so, when the next storm arises, you may remember, this too is weather. This too will move. I am still here, unchanged, aware, spacious enough to hold whatever comes. You might tell yourself that everything is fine, that there is nothing to fear, yet you may have noticed how often struggling against anxiety only makes it grow stronger.
Resistance tends to feed it, giving it more weight and urgency. Buddhist practice points in a very different direction. Instead of meeting anxiety with force,
it invites you to meet it with curiosity. When a fearful thought appears, rather than immediately attacking it, you pause and look at it with interest. There it is again, that familiar, worried voice. What is it saying this time? What outcome is it predicting now? As this thought arises, how does it show up in the body? Where is it felt? In the chest, the stomach, the throat. At first, this approach can feel strange. Why would you want to examine something that feels uncomfortable or threatening?
But curiosity has a powerful effect on both mind and nervous system.
Curiosity moves you out of automatic reaction and into conscious response. It activates the part of the brain associated with reflection and choice rather than pure emotion. It opens the space that allows freedom to emerge. Within Buddhist teachings, there is a simple but profound explanation of suffering, often referred to as the teaching of the two arrows.
And it offers a clear lens for understanding anxiety.
The first arrow represents the initial pain or difficulty that arises. This could be a physical sensation, an emotional surge, a stressful situation, a racing heart, a wave of fear, an uncomfortable circumstance. This first arrow hurts, and that pain is real. It is part of being alive.
Almost immediately, however, a second arrow follows. This second arrow is created by the mind.
It consists of the thoughts layered on top of the initial experience. The judgments, the resistance, the stories about what it means, the fear of how long it will last. The belief that you cannot handle it, the shame of feeling this way, the anger that it is happening at all, the despair that it may never end.
The first arrow is unavoidable. The second arrow is where most suffering takes root. Imagine lying awake at night when your heart suddenly begins to race.
That sensation alone is the first arrow. It may be uncomfortable, but it is simply a bodily event. The second arrow appears when the mind jumps in with alarm. What is wrong with me? Is this dangerous? Am I having a heart attack? Should I get help? This is unbearable.
Soon the thoughts multiply. What if it gets worse? What if I die? I will never fall asleep. Tomorrow will be ruined. I cannot function like this.
Now the experience is no longer just a physical sensation. It has turned into panic, layered upon panic. The fear fuels the body fuels the fear, and the spiral intensifies.
The original sensation may not have been dangerous at all. The suffering came from the added meaning, the catastrophic interpretation. Buddhist teaching does not suggest you should avoid the first
arrow. Pain, discomfort, fear, and difficult emotions are part of the human condition. But it gently shows that the second arrow is optional. You do not have to add the story. You do not have to pile judgment and resistance on top of what is already present. This is what it means to stop fighting thoughts and instead watch them. When fear-based thoughts arise, you do not need to engage with them, debate them, or forcibly push them away. They are simply thoughts, mental weather patterns, passing through awareness. They are seeking attention, not obedience.
Anxious thoughts can be compared to a child having a tantrum. If you completely ignore them, they may escalate, becoming louder and more dramatic.
If you give them total authority and treat their alarm as urgent reality, they learn that panic works. The balanced approach is to acknowledge them without being swept into their story. You can silently recognize them. I see you. I hear your concern. I understand you are trying to protect me. But right now, in this moment, I am safe enough. And I do not need to follow you into catastrophe. This acknowledgement is neither rejection nor surrender. It is presence.
At this point, the breath becomes especially important. Breathing is not a magic solution that erases anxious thoughts. Its power lies in its simplicity and immediacy.
It anchors you in what is actually happening rather than what the mind is projecting into an imagined future. When thoughts are racing, let them continue in the background, like noise from another room. Bring attention to the breath. Feel the cool air entering the nose. Feel the warmth as it leaves the mouth. Notice the belly rising and falling. Allow the body to soften with each exhale. The thoughts may keep talking. Let them. You do not need to silence them. You keep returning to the breath again and again, patiently and without judgment. Each return is a reminder that thoughts are not commands. They are events appearing in awareness. By practicing this, you learn that you can stay grounded in something real while mental storms pass through. You are training the mind to remain connected to the present instead of being pulled into imagined disasters that may never happen. As you listen to these ideas and reflect on them, you may notice subtle changes. Perhaps your thoughts feel a little less tight. Perhaps there is more space around them. Perhaps you are not taking them quite as seriously as before. Even a small shift matters. This is what happens when you begin to understand the mind from a contemplative perspective. The goal is not to eliminate thoughts or achieve permanent silence. The waves do not stop, but your relationship to them changes. They lose their absolute authority. They feel less solid, less overwhelming. You begin learning how to ride the waves rather than trying to flatten the ocean. Sometimes you stay balanced, moving with ease. Other times you fall and get tossed around. Both experiences are part of learning. Both have value. The difference now is that, you are not the waves themselves. You are not the anxious predictions or the worried commentary. You are the awareness that notices them. You can remain present even when the mind is busy. You can find stability even when thoughts are chaotic. Freedom does not come from controlling every mental movement. It comes from understanding what thoughts are and learning to observe without being carried away.
The restless mind may still chatter, jumping from one idea to the next. But now you can watch it. Instead of identifying with it,
you can see the performance without believing you are the performer. In that space of watching, something quietly reveals itself, a stillness that does not depend on mental calm. A peace beneath the noise, a freedom that was never lost, only obscured. As awareness rests here, as breath continues to move, as thoughts arise and pass, a recognition becomes clear. The mind is not in charge. You are not your thoughts. And this freedom has always been present, waiting to be noticed. For a long time, the body has been sending signals, perhaps for years. Yet attention has been so focused on thinking, planning, worrying, remembering, anticipating that its messages were overlooked. In Buddhist understanding, being born into a human body is considered a rare opportunity, not because the body is sacred in itself, but because it provides this exact capacity for awareness and awakening. Out of countless possible forms of existence, here you are with this nervous system, this sensitivity, this potential for understanding, and yet many people treat the body as a mere tool, something to manage or ignore until it malfunctions. But the body is more than a vehicle. It is a living field of sensation, constantly communicating, constantly offering information about what is happening right now. Sensations arise before thoughts. The body often knows long before the mind forms a narrative. Tightness, heaviness, warmth, trembling, ease. These are not problems to be solved. They are signals to be felt. When anxiety shows up, it rarely begins as a thought. It often starts as a sensation, a constriction in the chest, a flutter in the stomach, a subtle holding of the breath. The mind then rushes in to explain, interpret, and predict. But if attention returns to the body, something different becomes possible. You step out of the story and into direct experience. The body exists only in the present moment. It does not worry about tomorrow. It does not replay yesterday. It responds to what is happening now. When you bring awareness to bodily sensation, you are automatically grounding yourself in reality rather than imagination. This is why body awareness is such a powerful complement to working with thought. Instead of asking what is wrong with me, you can ask, what am I feeling right now? Instead of trying to escape sensation, you can explore it. Is it sharp or dull? Does it move or stay still? Is it warm or cool? Does it change when you breathe? This kind of attention is not analytical. It is intimate. It is listening. Many people have spent their lives disconnected from their bodies. They live from the neck up, relating to experience, almost entirely through thought. The body becomes something that interrupts thinking with discomfort or demands. But when you begin to listen, you may discover that the body is not your enemy. It is an ally. The body often carries tension that has been held for years, old fears, unexpressed emotions, habitual guarding. When awareness touches these areas, they may intensify at first. This does not mean something is wrong. It means something is being felt. Sensation that was previously suppressed is now allowed to come into awareness. This is why patience is essential. You are not forcing anything to release. You are not demanding that sensations change. You are simply allowing what is already there to be known. Over time, what is known can soften. What is resisted tends to persist. Breath plays a central role here as well, not as a technique to control the body, but as a bridge between mind and body. Breath happens on its own, yet it can also be felt consciously. By noticing breath, you are tuning into a process that reflects your internal state without judgment. When anxiety is present, the breath often becomes shallow or restricted. Simply noticing this without trying to fix it can be enough to begin a shift. Awareness itself has a regulating effect.
The body recognizes when it is being attended to with care rather than urgency.
As you continue practicing in this way, a new kind of trust begins to form. Trust in your capacity to feel without being overwhelmed. Trust in the body's intelligence. Trust in awareness itself. You realize that you do not need to be constantly managing your inner world. Much of it unfolds naturally when given space. This does not mean that discomfort disappears forever. It means you no longer meet discomfort with panic. You meet it with presence. You allow it to exist without turning it into a personal crisis.
Sensation becomes sensation. Thought becomes thought. Neither has to define you.
Over time, the sense of self begins to loosen. You see that what you previously called me was often a bundle of thoughts, reactions, and habits. As identification with these loosens, something more stable becomes apparent. Awareness does not fluctuate the way thoughts do. It does not tense or relax. It simply knows. This knowing is not distant or detached. It is intimate and alive. It includes sensation, emotion, sound, and thought, without being limited by any of them. From this perspective, anxiety is no longer something happening to you. It is something happening within awareness. This shift changes how you relate to life as a whole.
Challenges still arise. Uncertainty still exists. Loss still happens. But you are no longer meeting these experiences from a place of contraction.
You meet them from openness, from a sense that you can be with whatever arises. The practice is not about becoming calm all the time. It is about becoming honest. Honest with what is present. Honest with what you feel. Honest with the stories the mind tells.
From that honesty, compassion naturally grows.
Compassion for yourself, because you see how hard the mind has been working to protect you. Compassion for others, because you recognize the same patterns playing out in them.
Fear, grasping, resistance. These are not personal failures. They are human strategies.
As this understanding deepens, effort begins to soften. You are no longer trying to fix yourself. You are learning to understand yourself. You are learning to stay, to listen, to allow. Moments of stillness may begin to appear, not because you forced the mind to quiet, but because nothing is being pushed or pulled. In those moments, there is a sense of ease that does not depend on circumstances, a sense of being at home in experience. This stillness is not fragile. It can coexist with noise, movement,
And activity. It is not something you lose when thoughts return. It is something you notice when you stop chasing thoughts. It has always been there.
The mind will continue to think. That is its nature. The body will continue to feel. That is its wisdom. Awareness will continue to know. That is what you are. When these are no longer confused with each other, suffering begins to unwind. You are not required to achieve anything special.
You are not required to become someone else. You are simply invited to notice what has always been present beneath effort and struggle. The simplicity of this can be surprising.
Right now, sensation is present. Breath is moving. Sounds are appearing and disappearing. Thoughts may be arising. None of this requires your control. It is already happening. Awareness is already here, effortlessly including it all. In recognizing this, something settles. Not because life has been solved, but because you are no longer at war with your own experience. You are no longer mistaking weather for sky. You are remembering what holds it all. And from that remembering, a quiet confidence grows. Not confidence in outcomes, but confidence in presence. Confidence that whatever comes, it can be met. Confidence that you do not disappear when discomfort arises.
Confidence that awareness remains.
This is not the end of the path. It is the ground of it. It is a messenger. Everything you have not emotionally processed, everything you have suppressed, avoided, or tried to reason your way through, the body has been quietly recording. It holds what the mind was not ready to face. The tension in your shoulders is not accidental. It is the weight of responsibility you have been carrying alone.
The effort of holding everything together without pause. The tight jaw reflects words never spoken, anger swallowed, boundaries ignored. The knot in the stomach is unacknowledged fear, anxiety that has never been fully felt, intuition repeatedly overridden by logic. The body speaks first through sensation, long before it speaks through symptoms, long before it turns into illness. If you learn to listen to those early signals,
you can respond while the body is still whispering, before it has to shout. There is a woman, I will call Sarah, who came to understand this in a way that transformed her relationship with herself. She joined a yoga class, not out of spiritual interest, but because her doctor recommended it for chronic hip pain. The discomfort had been with her for years.
Dull and constant, sometimes flaring sharply. She had tried everything that seemed sensible: physical therapy, medication,
adjusting her workspace. Nothing brought lasting relief. One day, during a deep hip-opening posture, something unexpected happened. As the tension began to release,
she started to cry, not quietly, but with deep, shaking sobs that moved through her whole body. She felt confused and embarrassed, unable to explain it or stop it.
The teacher approached, placed a gentle hand on her back, and said softly that the body remembers what the mind forgets. Later, after the tears subsided, memories surfaced. Grief from her mother's death, 10 years earlier. She believed she had processed it. She had talked about it. She had understood it intellectually. But her body had been carrying the grief all along, storing it in her hips, waiting until she was still enough to feel it.
Over the following weeks, as she continued the practice, the pain slowly faded.
Not because stretching fixed a physical defect, but because she finally listened to what her body had been communicating for years. This reflects an understanding that has existed in Buddhist teaching for thousands of years. The body, mind, and emotions are not separate systems. They are deeply interconnected, constantly influencing one another. Mindfulness of the body is a foundational practice. It is not about perfecting the body or making it perform impressive feats.
It is about cultivating awareness of physical experience exactly as it is, moment by moment. This matters profoundly when it comes to anxiety. Because anxiety begins in the body before it appears as a thought.
Before you think the words "I am anxious," the body has already reacted. The heart rate increases. The breath shortens. Muscles tighten. Digestion slows. Hands grow cold or damp. The body enters a state of alarm before the mind has fully caught up. Modern life trains you to ignore these signals. You sit for hours without noticing your shoulders creeping upward. You stare at screens while your neck stiffens and your eyes burn.
You eat without tasting. You hold your breath under stress without realizing it. You override hunger, fatigue, the need to move or rest, because there's always something more to do. Sensation is dismissed in favor of productivity.
Over time, this creates a deep disconnection from yourself. Yet there is another layer to this teaching that can seem surprising. The body ages,
weakens, and eventually dies. This is not meant to be bleak. It is meant to wake you up.
When you truly recognize that this body is impermanent, that it will not always be here, something shifts. You stop assuming you have endless time. You begin to listen more carefully now. Attention becomes more urgent, more sincere. This human body is a rare opportunity, not because it is perfect, but because it allows awareness to recognize itself. Listening to the body does not mean worshiping it or turning it into an identity. It means respecting its messages, taking seriously what it reveals about stress, exhaustion, unexpressed emotion, the need for rest, movement, nourishment, or release. When your body says it is tired and you override it with caffeine and determination, that is not strength, it is disregard. When pain is numbed with distraction or constant busyness,
nothing is resolved. The body simply learns that it must speak louder next time. When you begin to listen, something changes. The body starts to trust you. It no longer needs to shout. It can communicate quietly, and you will hear it. To begin listening after years of ignoring, you start gently. You start with awareness. Right now, wherever you are, you can check in with your body as you would with someone you care about.
Bring attention to the top of your head. Notice any sensation. Tightness. Pressure. Nothing at all. There is no need to change anything. Simply notice. Move awareness to your face, your jaw.
Many people are clenching without realizing it. If the jaw softens on its own, allow it. Notice your shoulders. Are they raised, braced, heavy?
See if they can drop even slightly. Feel your chest and your breathing. Is the breath shallow or full? There is no judgment here, only curiosity.
Notice your belly. Any tightness, knots, fluttering. Bring attention to your hands. Are they gripping? Let the fingers relax if they want to.
Notice your legs and feet. Feel their contact with the ground. Sense the support beneath you. This simple noticing is the practice. It may reveal tension you were unaware of. sensations long ignored, or areas that feel distant or numb. There are three basic categories of physical sensation: pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Pleasant sensations are easy to enjoy, but the mind wants to cling to them. It wants to make them last. Unpleasant sensations are harder. The mind wants to escape them immediately. Neutral sensations make up most of experience, and the mind often ignores them entirely. What is transformative is learning to be aware of all three, without clinging, without resistance, without indifference, just noticing, just allowing. There is a story of a man called James, who attended a silent retreat reluctantly. His life revolved around thinking, planning, problem-solving. His body existed only to carry his mind from task to task. During a walking meditation, the instruction was simple: feel your feet touching the earth. He slowed down, felt his heel meet the ground, felt weight shift, felt toes press into the earth, and suddenly, without warning, he began to cry. He felt real for the first time in decades. Not like a mind floating through ideas, but a living being connected to something solid. Later he said, that moment felt more meaningful than any achievement, more real than success, because in that instant, he came home to himself. This is the power of attention. Nothing needed to be fixed. Nothing needed to change. Awareness alone was enough. You do not need to improve yourself to begin. You do not need to heal everything, understand everything, or become someone different. Awareness is not a reward you earn after fixing your life. It is available now, exactly as you are. The body does not ask for perfection. It asks for presence. When you begin to bring attention to physical experience, you may notice resistance, boredom, impatience, discomfort. The mind may say, this is pointless,
That nothing is happening, that you should be doing something more useful.
This is simply another pattern to observe. The habit of leaving the present moment is strong. Returning is a practice. As attention settles into the body, sensation becomes clearer. You start to notice subtle shifts. A tightening releases slightly. A breath deepens on its own. A sense of grounding appears. These are not achievements. They are signs that the nervous system is recognizing safety. Safety does not come from eliminating all discomfort. It comes from knowing you can stay with what is here without being overwhelmed. Each time you feel a sensation without running from it, you are teaching your system that experience itself is survivable. This is deeply regulating. Over time, the body begins to unwind in its own rhythm. Old tensions may surface. Emotions may arise without obvious stories attached to them. Sadness, anger, fear, not because something has gone wrong, but because awareness is finally present enough to allow them. When this happens, the instruction remains the same. Feel what is felt. Breathe. Allow. You do not need to analyze where an emotion came from. You do not need to name it correctly. Sensation does not require interpretation. It asks to be felt.
When emotion is allowed to move through the body without resistance, it often completes itself naturally.
This is very different from reliving the past or rehearsing stories.
The body processes emotion through sensation and movement, not through rumination. Awareness gives emotion the space it needs to resolve.
As this capacity grows, something else becomes clear. Much of what you once called anxiety was not a single thing. It was a layering. Sensation plus story. Tension plus interpretation. When the story is seen as a story, sensation becomes workable. You can feel a tight chest without assuming disaster. You can feel a flutter without believing something is wrong. This does not mean fear disappears forever. It means fear loses its authority. It becomes an experience rather than an identity. You no longer collapse into it or organize your life around avoiding
it. You meet it as part of the moment.
The body becomes a reliable anchor in this process. Thoughts can travel anywhere. The body is always here. When attention rests in sensation, you are grounded in reality rather than projection. This is why practices that involve movement, breath, and physical awareness are so powerful for anxiety. They reconnect you with what is actually happening. Gradually, a sense of trust develops. Trust that the body knows how to regulate when it is listened to. Trust that awareness can hold intense experience without breaking.
Trust that you do not need to control every internal movement to be okay.
This trust changes how you move through the world. You become less reactive, less driven by avoidance, more able to pause, more able to feel before acting. Decisions arise from clarity rather than fear. You may notice that boundaries become easier to sense. The body often knows when something is too much long before the mind admits it. Fatigue, tightness, dullness. These are signals. When you listen early, you do not need to wait for burnout. Rest becomes something you allow rather than something forced upon you. Movement becomes an expression of care rather than obligation. Eating becomes an act of nourishment rather than distraction. These are not spiritual ideals. They are practical consequences of listening. Awareness of the body also deepens compassion. When you feel your own vulnerability directly, it becomes harder to judge others harshly. You recognize the same tension, the same fear, the same strategies playing out everywhere. This softens the heart. None of this requires withdrawing from life. You can practice awareness while working, speaking, walking, listening. You notice your breath while answering emails. You feel your feet while standing in line. You sense your shoulders while speaking to someone difficult. The practice integrates itself. Some days you will forget. You will get lost in thought again. You will override signals. That is not a failure. That is part of conditioning. Each moment of remembering is enough. Each return strengthens the pattern of awareness. Eventually, the division between formal practice and daily life begins to blur.
Awareness becomes less something you do and more something you notice is already happening. Sensation, sound, thought, emotion all arise within the same field.
In this field, the body is not an obstacle to awakening. It is the doorway. Sensation keeps you honest. It keeps you present. It prevents you from escaping entirely into abstraction. The body will continue to change. It will age. It will weaken. This is not a problem to be solved. It is a truth to be lived with. Awareness does not depend on the body being young or pain-free. It depends on attention. When discomfort arises, you do not need to dramatize it. When pleasure arises, you do not need to cling. When neutrality arises, you do not need to check out. Everything becomes part of the same unfolding. This is what it means to inhabit your life fully, not as an idea, but as an experience, not as a project, but as a presence. The body breathes. Sensation appears. Thoughts move through. Awareness remains. Nothing extra is required. You are already here. You only have to notice, to sense, to stay with what is happening in your own physical experience. When awareness finally turns toward the body with kindness after years of neglect, criticism, or relentless pressure, something begins to change. Long-held tension starts to ease. Not because you commanded it to relax, not because you forced calm through effort, but because the body naturally softens when it is finally acknowledged,
when it is met with gentleness instead of constant demand.
It is similar to a child who has been crying for a long time. The moment you stop rushing past, lower yourself to their level and truly listen, the crying fades. Not because the situation has been solved or corrected, but because the child feels recognized, seen, heard. Your body responds in the same way. It is not asking you to be flawless, it is asking you to be present. From here, attention turns to the simplest and most universal practice. One that has been with you since the first moment of life and will remain until the final breath. The breath itself, not controlling it, not shaping it, not trying to make it slow, deep, or special, just noticing it, allowing it to be exactly as it is. Breath awareness has been taught for centuries as a foundational practice for cultivating calm and insight. Its simplicity often causes people to dismiss it. The mind looks for complexity, for something advanced, something impressive. Yet entire lifetimes have been devoted to this single practice, without exhausting its depth. The breath holds a unique position. It links conscious and unconscious processes. It bridges voluntary and involuntary systems. You cannot directly command your heart to slow, but breathing influences it. You cannot manually regulate digestion, but the breath affects it. You cannot order anxiety to disappear, yet breathing can shift the state of the nervous system. The breath has been faithful from the beginning, more constant than relationships, more reliable than circumstances, more present than any possession. It is always here, always now, always available. No preparation is required. No special environment, no teacher beside you. The breath is present in traffic, during conversations, lying awake at night, in moments of panic, in moments of joy, in moments of loss. A few conscious breaths can shift the entire internal landscape. Not because breathing is mystical, but because slow, attentive breathing sends a clear signal through the nervous system that there is no immediate danger, that rest is possible, that the moment does not require alarm. This can be done immediately, right now, wherever you are. Pause for 3 breaths. Inhale gently through the nose, feeling the air enter. Noticing the belly expand slightly. Exhale through the mouth, allowing softness, allowing release. Let the breath carry away what does not need to be held. Inhale again, perhaps a little fuller, if that feels natural. Exhale slowly, steady and unforced, like blowing out a candle, without urgency. One more breath. Inhaling fully, exhaling completely, allowing the out-breath to linger just a little longer than the in-breath. Notice what has shifted, maybe only slightly, maybe a touch more grounded, a bit more present. Less caught in mental momentum. This is the quiet power of breathing. Nothing elaborate, nothing dramatic, always accessible. There is no need to do it perfectly, no need to count or measure. Simply noticing is enough. When anxiety builds, when thoughts accelerate, when you feel yourself drifting away from your body and into your head, return to the breath. Not as a way to escape discomfort, but as a way to anchor in what is real, in the simple fact of being alive, breathing. Here, the breath becomes medicine,
simple medicine, deep medicine. And the body, this temporary vessel that has been communicating all along,
waits patiently for your attention. It waits for you to return.
You do not need to change your body. You do not need to improve it. You only need to feel your feet on the ground, notice the breath moving in and out.
Sense the sensations that arise and fade moment by moment. This is the return to the body, not as avoidance of thought, but as integration. Becoming whole rather than divided. When life is lived only in the mind, anxiety has unlimited space to expand, endless room for imagined futures and catastrophic scenarios. But when attention comes back into the body,
into contact with the ground and the breath, awareness returns to what is actually happening rather than what might happen. And what is happening right now is usually manageable. The body knows this. It has always known. And now, finally, it is being heard.
There have been 3 movements: reclaiming time, freeing the mind, returning to the body. What follows is where understanding becomes lived reality.
Wisdom is not meant to remain confined to quiet moments or formal practice. It is meant to move through ordinary life, through work, relationships,
routines. This is where insight turns into transformation. One of the most radical practices in modern life is deceptively simple: doing one thing at a time. Contemporary culture celebrates divided attention. Multitasking is praised. You answer messages during meetings, scroll while watching something, eat while working, listen while planning, think ahead while someone is speaking.
The result is exhaustion, dissatisfaction, a sense that days blur together despite constant activity. What is rarely acknowledged is that multitasking fractures presence.
Each split of attention divides the self. Consciousness is scattered, unable to fully inhabit any experience.
The body sits at a table while the mind checks messages. Eyes look at a loved one while thoughts rehearse the future. You are physically present in many places, but truly present in none.
A divided mind creates a divided life. Peace requires wholeness. Integration. Attention gathered into one place. There is an old tradition centered around preparing tea, where every movement is performed with total attention. Water is heated with awareness of sound and steam. Tea is whisked with full presence to texture, color, rhythm. The offering is made with the whole being.
The receiving is equally attentive. Warmth, aroma, taste. One sip at a time.
An entire life revealed in a single cup, not as ritual for its own sake, but as a reminder. When walking, just walk. When eating, just eat. Not eating while planning. Not walking while worrying. Only this matters because divided attention prevents the nervous system from settling. Constant switching creates a low-level state of urgency. It feels productive, but it quietly generates chronic stress and background anxiety. There is also a deeper fatigue that comes from never being fully anywhere. At work, thinking about home. At home, thinking about work. On vacation, checking messages. Existing between places rather than in any place at all. This partial presence is draining, in a way sleep cannot repair. A simple practice can begin to reverse this. Choose one small action. One dish. Not the entire sink, just one. Feel the water temperature. Notice the texture of soap. See light Reflect off the surface. Hear the sound of movement. Be fully there. Nothing extraordinary is required. Only attention. Only presence.
Let that single action be enough. Stay with it from beginning to end. When the mind drifts, gently return it to the sensation in your hands, the movement, the sound, not as discipline, as kindness, as an invitation to come back.
This is how practice enters daily life, not by adding more tasks, but by bringing presence into what is already there. Washing a dish, drinking water, walking to another room, listening when someone speaks, feeling your feet as you stand in line. These moments are not interruptions to life. They are life. Anxiety feeds on fragmentation, on the sense of being pulled in many directions at once. When attention is scattered, the nervous system remains alert.
Scanning, bracing. But when attention gathers into one simple act, the system receives a different message. Nothing else is required right now.
This moment is sufficient.
At first,
This may feel uncomfortable. The mind is used to stimulation, to constant input. Stillness can feel unfamiliar. Presence can feel exposed. But over time, something steadies. A quiet confidence grows. The body recognizes safety in simplicity. Doing one thing at a time is not about efficiency. It is about integrity, allowing each moment to be whole rather than broken into pieces. Allowing yourself to arrive fully instead of hovering halfway elsewhere. This extends to listening.
when someone speaks, notice the impulse to plan a response, to check out, to drift ahead. See if it is possible to stay, to hear the tone.
The pauses, the emotion beneath the words, to let listening be the only task. It extends to rest, resting without scrolling, without justifying, without mentally preparing for what comes next, allowing rest to actually be rest. It extends to work, completing one task before jumping to the next, feeling the body as you work, noticing when tension builds, responding before it hardens.
These are not small changes. They reshape how the nervous system experiences life. They rebuild trust between mind and body. The body learns that it does not need to shout to be heard.
Over time, signals become clearer. Fatigue is noticed earlier. Hunger is recognized before irritability sets in. Emotional responses are felt before they turn into symptoms. This is intelligence returning to its natural flow. Nothing mystical is required. No special identity, just a willingness to pay attention, to stop treating the body as an obstacle or a tool and start relating to it as a partner. When anxiety arises, it no longer feels like an enemy to defeat. It becomes information, a message asking for attention, a signal that something is being carried alone. You feel your feet, you feel your breath. You do one thing, and in doing so, you return.
This is how wholeness is rebuilt. Not all at once, moment by moment, sensation by sensation, breath by breath. And eventually, presence stops feeling like a practice and starts feeling like home.
Feel the weight of the plate in your hands, the cool surface warmed by water, the quiet satisfaction as the last trace of food loosens and disappears. Just one plate. Nothing else exists for these few moments. No sound in your ears competing for attention. No screen nearby. No mental list of what follows. Only this simple action, held fully, as if it matters more than anything else, because right now it does. This is not advice about efficiency or self-improvement. It has nothing to do with getting better at chores or organizing your day. This is a practice of freedom. Because when all of your scattered attention gathers into one small, ordinary act, something unexpected reveals itself. The present moment is enough. Being fully here is more nourishing than being half present everywhere else. Peace does not arrive when everything is finished.
It appears when you are completely with what you are doing now.
This is how life begins to change. Not in dramatic gestures, but in simplicity. One action at a time. One breath at a time, your whole being collected into this moment, instead of spread thin across imagined futures and unfinished pasts. There is another quiet force shaping much of your suffering, often without you noticing it. A single word that repeats itself endlessly in the background of the mind.
Should. I should be further along. I should be calmer. My life should make more sense by now. This should not be happening. They should not act this way. Each should is a small rejection of reality.
Buddhism names this tanha, often translated as craving, but it is deeper than desire. It is the habit of wanting reality to be different than it is right now. Wanting pleasant moments to last forever. Wanting discomfort to disappear immediately.
Wanting neutrality to turn into something more interesting. Should is simply the voice this craving takes inside your mind.
Every should creates a battle with reality. Reality says, this is what is happening. The mind replies, no, this is wrong. And in the space between what is and what you think should be,
suffering grows. There is an old story shared across Eastern traditions that points directly at this truth.
An elderly farmer owned a single horse. One day the horse ran away. The neighbors gathered and said, "How terrible." The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day the horse returned, bringing several wild horses with it. "How wonderful," the neighbors said. "Maybe," the farmer answered. Soon after, the farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses, fell, and broke his leg. "Such bad luck," the neighbors said. "Maybe," the farmer replied. Days later, soldiers came to draft young men for war, but the son was spared because of his injury. "Such good fortune," the neighbors said, and again the farmer said, "Maybe." The story reflects a core teaching. Suffering arises from this constant demand that reality conform to our expectations. We label events too quickly. Good, bad, wrong, unacceptable. But what if you stopped what if, like the farmer, you simply acknowledged what is happening without immediately declaring it a problem or a blessing? Acceptance does not mean approval. It does not mean giving up or becoming passive. It simply means seeing clearly what is present right now. Not how you wish it were, not how it might become, just how it is. Buddhism calls this seeing things as they truly are. Here is the paradox. When you stop fighting reality, you gain more ability to respond wisely. Imagine standing in a fast river, shouting that the water should not be cold, that the current should slow down, that it should flow another way. You exhaust yourself. But when you acknowledge the truth of the river, you can move intelligently. You can adjust your angle. Use the current. Find a safer crossing. Energy shifts from resistance into action. Notice where should appears in your life. A feeling you judge as unacceptable. A situation you refuse to acknowledge. A person you demand be different. And ask yourself a simple question. What if you stopped arguing with reality, not stopped caring, not stopped acting, just stopped wasting energy on denial?
From acceptance comes clarity, and from clarity comes action, rooted in what is real, not in fantasy. An enormous amount of trapped energy is released this way.
Think of how much mental effort goes into resisting traffic, weather, other people, your own body, your own emotions. When that resistance softens, life becomes easier, not because circumstances change, but because you are no longer fighting first. This brings us to emotions, one of the most misunderstood parts of being human. Your emotions are weather, not climate. They move through you. They change. They are not who you are. Right now, there is weather passing through your inner world. Perhaps it is calm, perhaps stormy, perhaps unclear. Whatever it is temporary. Buddhism teaches the observation of feeling without clinging or resistance. Emotions fall into the same three categories as bodily sensations. Pleasant emotions feel good. Joy, affection, excitement. The mind tries to hold them,
Stretch them, freeze them in place. And when they fade, as all things do, suffering appears through grasping. Unpleasant emotions feel threatening.
fear, anger, sadness, anxiety. The mind tries to push them away immediately. This resistance often strengthens them, extending their stay. Neutral states feel dull, and the mind searches for stimulation, sometimes creating worry just to feel something. Suffering does not come from emotions themselves,
but from how you relate to them. Clinging, aversion, forgetting impermanence.
What if you could feel emotions without becoming them? Experience fear without defining yourself as fearful. Notice sadness without turning it into identity. A Zen monk once explained this simply. Anger arose, moved through him and passed. He did not deny it. He did not become it. He was the space in which it appeared. I notice anxiety is profoundly different from I am anxious. One creates space. The other creates a prison. When you observe, you remember that something in you remains steady even as weather moves through.
This is not emotional suppression. It is emotional freedom. Allowing everything to arise and pass without letting it define the whole of who you are.
In that space of awareness, something becomes clear. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the awareness that can hold them gently without being consumed. And from that awareness, life becomes lighter, not because nothing difficult arises, but because nothing needs to be carried alone anymore. That space you create when you notice, rather than identify, becomes a refuge. Not a place you escape to, but a way of standing in the middle of experience without drowning in it.
Emotions still come. Some are intense, some linger longer than you would like.
But they no longer define the limits of who you are. They become visitors, not owners. When anxiety appears, you begin to recognize it as movement, not truth. Sensation in the body. Energy rising. Thoughts forming around it. You feel it without immediately asking it to leave. And paradoxically, when it is allowed to exist, it often loosens on its own, like a knot that tightens when pulled and softens when touched with patience. This does not mean you like anxiety. It does not mean you stop caring about your life. It means you stop turning discomfort into identity. You stop telling the story that something is wrong with you because a difficult emotion is present. You stop adding the second layer of suffering on top of the first. Over time, this changes how you relate to yourself. There is less self-judgment, less internal pressure to be different, better, calmer, fixed. You begin to meet your inner life the same way you would meet a close friend, with curiosity, with respect, with the understanding that everything that arises is trying, in its own confused way, to protect you. This understanding softens the nervous system. When emotions are not treated as emergencies, The body does not need to escalate them to be heard. The volume lowers. The waves still rise,
but they crest more gently and pass more quickly. You start to notice the gap between stimulus and response. Someone says something sharp. A situation does not go as planned. A familiar worry appears.
And instead of reacting automatically, there is a pause. In that pause, choice lives. Not the forced choice of control, but the natural choice that arises from clarity. This is where freedom actually is. Not in controlling life, but in responding to it wisely. Not in eliminating emotion, but in allowing it without being ruled by it. The mind may still tell stories. It may still predict, compare, remember, and worry. That is its nature. But you no longer mistake those stories for reality itself.
You see them as constructions, not commands. You listen without obeying.
And gradually, something else becomes apparent. Beneath all the movement, beneath thought and feeling and sensation, there is a steadiness that does not come and go. A quiet presence that is not excited by pleasure or threatened by discomfort. It has been there the entire time. You do not need to create this presence. You do not need to earn it. You are not developing it. You are remembering it.
This remembering does not happen once and last forever.
It happens again and again in small, ordinary moments. When you feel your feet on the ground, when you take a conscious breath, when you allow an emotion to pass without commentary, when you do one thing at a time. Sometimes you will forget. You will get caught again. You will identify, resist, judge, and struggle. This is not failure. This is practice. Each noticing is a return. Each return strengthens the pathway back to presence. There is no final state where anxiety never arises again.
There is no permanent calm that replaces the complexity of being human. What changes is your relationship to experience. You stop living at war with yourself. When difficulty comes, you meet it. When pleasure comes, you enjoy it without clinging. When neutrality appears, you rest in it without searching for drama. Life becomes less about managing internal states and more about participating fully in what is happening. This participation feels grounded, real, alive. You are no longer watching your life from a distance, trapped inside commentary about it. You are here, inside your body, inside the moment, responding instead of reacting. And perhaps, most importantly, compassion grows. Not as an idea, but as a natural response. When you stop fighting your own inner weather, you stop demanding that others be different too. You recognize the same patterns of fear, craving, and confusion moving through everyone. Patience becomes easier, kindness less forced. This is how the teachings become lived, not studied, not as beliefs to adopt, but as ways of seeing that gradually reshape how you move through the world. Nothing dramatic needs to happen. No identity needs to change. You simply pay attention in a different way. One moment at a time, one breath, one sensation, one feeling noticed without becoming it. And in that simplicity, something profound unfolds. You realize you were never broken. You were never missing anything essential. You were just identified with passing weather, forgetting the sky that has always been there. This is not an ending. It is an ongoing return. And each time you come back, even briefly, you strengthen the recognition that freedom is not somewhere else,
waiting in the future. It is here, quietly present, whenever you stop and see what is actually happening now.
Maybe it was a period of anxiety so intense you could not imagine ever feeling normal again. At the time, it felt permanent, defining like the rest of your life would be lived inside that state, and yet, here you are, that chapter ended. Not because you forced it to, not because you solved it perfectly, but because it was never meant to last.
This is not positive thinking. This is not denial. This is reality as it actually is. Everything moves. Everything shifts. Even the things that feel solid and fixed are changing beneath the surface. When you understand this deeply, anxiety loses one of its strongest weapons, the illusion of permanence. Anxiety survives on the belief that this feeling will last forever, or this situation defines me. Impermanence quietly dismantles both. It does not argue with the feeling.
It simply reminds you of the larger truth.
Nothing stays. And here's the subtle but crucial shift. When you know something will pass, you can afford to stay present with it. You do not have to run. You do not have to panic. You do not have to fix everything immediately. You can breathe and say, "This is here right now, not forever, just now." This is how courage actually works. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to remain present while fear is present, knowing it will change. Courage grounded in reality, not bravado. The Buddha never promised a life without pain. What he offered was freedom from unnecessary suffering. Pain happens. Loss happens. Fear happens.
But the suffering we add by clinging, resisting, and identifying that part is optional. When you stop demanding that life be predictable, controllable, and permanently comfortable, something inside you relaxes.
You begin to trust change instead of fearing it. You stop asking, "How do I make this never happen again?" and start asking, "How do I meet this wisely while it is here?" This trust does not make you passive. It makes you resilient. Like bamboo in a storm, bending, not breaking. The rigid tree snaps. The flexible one survives.
And slowly, quietly, you begin to live differently.
You notice anxiety sooner, before it becomes overwhelming. You feel it in the body and respond with breath instead of panic. You hear the catastrophic stories and recognize them as stories.
You allow emotions to move without turning them into identity. You come back to the body, to one task, to one moment again and again. None of this happens all at once. There is no finish line. There is no moment where you graduate and never struggle again. Practice is not a ladder you climb. It is a circle you return to.
Some days you will remember easily. Other days you will forget completely. Both are part of the path. The forgetting does not erase the remembering. Each return strengthens the capacity to return again. And over time, something profound becomes obvious, not as an idea, but as lived experience. You are bigger than any moment you are in, wider than any emotion you feel, deeper than any thought you think. The waves can be high, the storms can be fierce, but the ocean remains.
This does not mean you detach from life. You still love, you still care, you still grieve, you still hope. But you do so without losing yourself in the process. You feel fully without drowning.
This is what it means to be free within life, not outside of it. So when anxiety comes again, and it will meet it like an old acquaintance,
not with fear, not with submission, but with recognition.
Ah, you are here again. I know you. I do not need to fight you. I do not need to become you. You can stay as long as you need. And you will leave when it is time. And while it is here, you breathe. You feel your feet. You do one thing at a time. You listen to your body. You allow the wave to rise and fall.
Because you are not here to control the ocean.
You are here to learn how to live in it.
And the more you trust that
the more you discover something that has been true all along. No matter what comes, you are capable of meeting it. No matter what arises, it will pass.
And no matter how intense the weather becomes, the depth of who you are remains untouched.
Right here.
Right now.
And there is one more layer to this understanding, one that often gets overlooked.
Impermanence is not just something you observe after emotions arise.
It is something you can feel inside the moment itself. Right in the middle of anxiety, if you slow down enough, you can notice that it is not a single solid thing. It is a constellation of sensations: tightness in the chest, heat in the face, shallow breath, racing thoughts, each one subtly shifting, pulsing,
changing second by second.
What anxiety hates most is being observed closely. When you bring gentle attention to it, not to make it go away, but simply to see it clearly, it begins to lose its illusion of unity. It breaks apart into movements. And movements, by their nature, move. They cannot stay frozen. This is why mindfulness works not as a technique to suppress anxiety, but as a way of revealing its true nature. When you see clearly, you suffer less. Not because the wave disappears instantly, but because you are no longer mistaking the wave for the ocean. And this brings us to another deep teaching, one that complements impermanence, non-resistance. Most of your struggle with anxiety is not the feeling itself. It is the second arrow, the tension that says, this should not be happening.
The fear that says, if this is here, something is wrong with me. The urgency that says, I must fix this now.
But what if nothing has gone wrong? What if this moment, uncomfortable, shaky, uncertain, is simply part of being alive in a nervous system designed to protect you? Anxiety is not a personal failure. It is a survival response that has lost its sense of proportion. It is an alarm that goes off too often and too loudly. Not because you are broken, but because your system learned vigilance at some point in your life. When you stop treating anxiety as an enemy, something surprising happens. The internal war ends. And without the war, the energy feeding the anxiety begins to drain.
This does not mean anxiety never shows up again.
It means when it does, it meets less resistance, and less resistance means less suffering.
Think about quicksand. The more you thrash, the faster you sink. Stillness does not mean giving up. It means responding intelligently to the conditions you are in. Anxiety works the same way. Struggle amplifies it. Allowing weakens it.
This is why the path is not about control, but about relationship. How do you relate to what arises in your mind and body? Do you meet it with judgment or curiosity, with panic or patience, with stories or sensation? Every moment you choose awareness over reaction, you are rewiring something deep. You are teaching your nervous system that it is safe to feel without being overwhelmed. You are showing yourself, again and again, that presence is stronger than fear. And slowly, very slowly, trust replaces control. You stop asking, how do I make sure this never happens again? And start asking,
how can I stay grounded when it does?
That shift changes everything. Because life will never stop changing. Emotions will never stop arising. Loss will happen. Uncertainty will remain. But you do not need a life without storms to be at peace. You need confidence in your ability to ride them. And that confidence does not come from force. It comes from experience. From the quiet realization that you have been here before and survived. from noticing that even intense waves eventually soften, from remembering that awareness has never once left you, not in fear, not in grief, not in confusion. This is not something you achieve. It is something you recognize. You were never the wave.
You were never the storm.
You were always the ocean,
learning slowly, patiently,
how to trust its own depth.
Maybe it was a stretch of depression or anxiety that once felt endless, like being pulled under dark water with no sense of where the surface might be.
And still, you are here. That chapter closed. That season moved on. Somehow, even without knowing how at the time, you passed through it and emerged on the other side. This does not erase what you endured, and it does not dismiss what you may still be carrying now. Pain matters, struggle matters, but impermanence matters too. And when you remember that every difficult phase in your past eventually shifted, it becomes easier to sense that this one will also change. Not because you forced it, not because you were strong or optimistic enough, but because movement is built into reality itself. The river does not stop. The seasons continue their quiet rotation. Breath keeps entering and leaving the body.
Experience keeps transforming, reshaping itself moment after moment. When this truth is felt deeply rather than understood intellectually,
something loosens. You stop gripping your experiences so tightly. You can feel anxiety without concluding it defines your life. You can feel sadness without turning it into an identity. You can be in difficulty without believing your entire existence is broken. Everything shifts, everything moves on. And instead of being tragic, this becomes one of the greatest forms of relief available to you. This is where the teaching opens into something even more intimate, more alive, more relevant to how you actually live. If nothing lasts, if no moment can ever repeat itself in exactly the same way, then each moment becomes immeasurably valuable. Impermanence is not only a comfort in pain, it is a call to awaken. When you truly sense that this breath, this exchange, this quiet sound in the room will never appear again in this exact form, presence stops being an effort. It happens naturally. You stop delaying your life. You stop telling yourself you will relax later, appreciate later, love more fully later, because you see that there is no guaranteed future moment where everything finally settles and you allow yourself to arrive. There is only this instant, this breath happening now, already fading as soon as it appears. There is an old Zen story that carries this truth gently. An elderly woman was nearing the end of her life. Her family gathered close, grieving in advance, holding her hands, overwhelmed by what was coming. A hospice worker asked if there was anything she wanted that might bring her comfort. She smiled softly and said she wanted a cup of green tea. They prepared it carefully,
helped her sit up, placed the warm cup in her shaking hands. She drank slowly, attentively, as if nothing else existed. When she finished,
she set the cup down, looked at her family with calm clarity, and said it was the best tea she had ever tasted. When her daughter asked why, the woman replied that it was because she knew it was her last, so she truly tasted it. This is not dark or hopeless. It is awake. The woman was not crushed by the knowledge of death. She was sharpened by it. It allowed her to meet that simple cup of tea with a depth of presence she might never have touched otherwise. You do not need to be dying to live this way. You only need to remember that everything is passing. This moment, your body, the people you love, the life you are living right now, all of it is temporary. Every conversation happens once.
Even with the same person, even if you speak every day, this version of them and this version of you meeting at this point in time will never return.
Every breath is a literal gift. You are breathing now without any real guarantee of the next inhale, even though you assume it will arrive. Each breath is received and released, moment by moment. When impermanence is understood at this level, gratitude stops being something you try to practice. It arises on its own, not because you are forcing positivity, but because you recognize how fragile and fleeting everything is. Pause for a moment and notice what you feel grateful for right now. Not what you think you should appreciate, not what sounds correct, but what genuinely touches you in this moment. It might be something large or something almost invisible. Let yourself feel it not as a thought, but as a sensation in the body. And then remember that this too will change. It will not remain forever in this form. And that awareness makes it even more precious.
This is the balance, holding everything lightly while loving it deeply. Not clinging out of fear, but cherishing, because you understand reality. This moment, exactly as it is, will never return. Not this arrangement of sound and light.
Not this feeling in your chest. Not this version of you listening. Life keeps creating new moments, each one singular, unrepeatable, valuable, precisely because it dissolves as it appears. So how do you live with this knowledge? You soften. You loosen your grip on how things must be and open yourself to how they are. You become less rigid,
more adaptable, more like water finding its shape without resistance.
You settle into the simplicity of now.
Not with desperation, not trying to extract meaning from every second, but with gentleness, just being here, just noticing that you are alive, sensing, breathing, aware. Much of the anxiety you carry comes from trying to freeze what cannot be frozen, from attempting to secure certainty where none exists. But when impermanence is accepted, not conceptually, but emotionally, something releases. You can love without gripping.
You can care without controlling. You can hope without demanding outcomes.
You can live fully while holding everything with open hands, knowing nothing stays. And that knowledge is what makes life beautiful.
Cherry blossoms are treasured not despite their brief bloom, but because of it. If they lasted all year, no one would gather beneath them in awe.
No one would write poems or travel great distances just to see them.
Their fleeting nature is what makes them luminous.
Your life is the same. These days, these hours, these shared moments are precious because they are passing.
So, what are you waiting for? What appreciation are you postponing? What presents are you delaying until conditions improve? What love are you withholding until certainty appears? Later is not promised. Perfect rarely arrives. Certainty is an illusion, but now is here. Imperfect, unstable, temporary, and immeasurably valuable.
You always have a choice, to be here for this moment or to keep deferring your life to an imagined future, where everything finally aligns. The wisdom of impermanence teaches that living happens now, not because death is imminent, but because this moment is the only one that exists. Yesterday has dissolved. Tomorrow has not arrived. This fleeting instant is all you ever truly have. So take a breath. Feel it enter. Feel it leave. Notice yourself here, alive, aware. This breath will never repeat. This version of you will never exist again. That is not pressure. It is not meant to create urgency or fear. It is an invitation to wake up, to arrive, to let the tenderness of impermanence soften you into deeper presence, deeper appreciation, deeper love for this constantly changing life. Everything passes. The pain passes. The joy passes. This moment passes. And that is not sad. It is freeing. It is the invitation to stop waiting and begin living right here. You do not need to go anywhere else. You do not need to withdraw from your life to find peace. What you need is simpler than you think. You need to learn how to create small sanctuaries of presence exactly where you are. These small sanctuaries do not require silence, candles, or a special posture. They exist inside ordinary moments, hidden in plain sight. A pause before you answer a message. One conscious breath before you step into a room. Feeling your feet on the floor while you wait. Letting your shoulders drop while standing at the sink. These moments are brief, almost invisible. But they are powerful because they interrupt the trance of rushing. A micro moment of sanctuary is simply a moment where you remember yourself, not the story of who you think you are, not the role you are playing, not the problem you are trying to solve, but the direct experience of being alive right now. Sensation, breath, awareness, nothing extra. You do not need to escape your life to find peace. You need to stop abandoning yourself while living it. Most anxiety is not created by what is happening, but by how rarely you arrive where you are. The body is here. The mind is usually somewhere else replaying, rehearsing, predicting. When awareness returns to the body, even briefly, the nervous system receives a signal of safety. Nothing bad is happening right now. That signal, repeated gently over time, begins to rewire something deep. You start to realize that peace is not a permanent state you achieve and then hold on to. It is a series of returns. Again and again, you drift. Again and again, you come back. That is not failure. That is the practice. One breath can be enough. One moment of feeling your hands, your jaw, your belly can be enough. These moments do not remove difficulty from your life. They change how you meet it. Instead of being swallowed whole by experience, you stand inside it with awareness. You feel the wave without becoming it.
And slowly, something shifts. You trust yourself more. Not because life becomes predictable, but because you discover that you can be present inside uncertainty. This is where impermanence becomes lived wisdom rather than an idea. You stop demanding that feelings stay or go. You let them move. You stop asking life to guarantee outcomes. You meet what arrives. There is a quiet strength that comes from this, a steadiness that is not rigid, a resilience that is not forced. You bend without breaking, because you are no longer fighting the fact that everything bends.
When anxiety appears, you do not panic about its arrival. You recognize it as weather. You feel it in the body. You breathe. You allow. And because you allow, it does not need to scream to be heard. This does not mean you never struggle again. It means the struggle no longer defines you. You begin to see that awareness has been present in every chapter of your life. It was there during joy, it was there during pain, it was there during confusion, heartbreak, fear. It never left, even when you thought you had.
That awareness is not fragile. It does not get damaged by emotion. It does not disappear when things fall apart. It remains, quietly witnessing everything that comes and goes. And the more you rest in that recognition, the less you fear change. Because change no longer threatens your existence. It only alters the content of experience, not the space in which experience appears. This is why impermanence, when truly understood, leads not to despair, but to intimacy with life. You stop taking moments for granted. You stop numbing yourself waiting for a better future. You show up. You listen more fully. You love more honestly. You forgive more quickly, not because you are trying to be spiritual, but because you see how quickly everything moves. The argument you are holding on to will fade. The person you are angry at will change. You will change. Knowing this does not make relationships meaningless. It makes them precious. You do not have forever to say what matters. You have now, and now is always enough. So when you notice yourself rushing, pause. When you notice yourself tightening, soften. When you notice yourself waiting for life to begin, arrive. This moment is not a rehearsal, it is the event itself. You do not need to do anything extraordinary with it. You just need to be here for it. And then the next moment arrives, and the next. Each one brief, each one complete, each one offering you the same quiet invitation.
He carried this restlessness for years, believing that peace lived somewhere else, in a better place, with better people, under more perfect conditions.
Eventually, exhausted from searching, he brought his frustration to his teacher and confessed that no environment ever seemed quite right, that something was always missing. The teacher listened quietly and then said, very simply, the problem is not the monastery. The problem is the mind that wants the monastery to be different.
That moment changed everything for him. He realized that while environment matters, it is never meant to be perfect. A supportive space can help the mind settle, but no space can do the work for you.
If you keep waiting for ideal conditions, practice is always postponed. So he stopped leaving. He stayed. And instead of trying to control the environment,
he began to study his reactions to it. The noise became his teacher. The discomfort became his teacher. The irritation became his teacher. This is the balance. You do not ignore environment, and you do not become dependent on it.
You choose what you can choose, and you work with what you cannot. You simplify where possible. You reduce unnecessary stimulation. You seek companionship that supports calm rather than constant agitation. And at the same time, you stop demanding that life be arranged just right before you allow yourself to be present.
Good companionship does not mean people who are always calm, always wise, always peaceful. It means people who value awareness, people who are willing to pause,
people who take responsibility for their inner state rather than constantly projecting it outward. Sometimes that companionship comes from others. Sometimes, especially in difficult seasons, it comes from yourself. You can be your own spiritual friend. The way you speak to yourself matters. The tone you use internally matters. If your inner voice is harsh, impatient, critical, your nervous system never gets a chance to rest. Right companionship includes cultivating a relationship with yourself that is firm but kind, honest but gentle.
Notice how you talk to yourself when you are anxious.
Do you shame yourself for feeling it? Do you tell yourself you should be over this by now? Do you pressure yourself to calm down immediately? That voice is not helping. It is tightening the knot. Try a different tone. One that says, this is hard, and I am here. One that says, you do not need to fix this right now. One that says, let us just breathe and see what happens next.
This is not weakness. It is regulation.
And regulation is the foundation of clarity. When your nervous system feels safe,
insight comes naturally. When it feels threatened, the mind narrows, contracts, rushes. No amount of wisdom can penetrate a system that feels under attack.
This is why kindness is not optional on this path. It is functional. Everything you have been learning comes back to this simple truth. Suffering increases when you resist reality, and it softens when you meet reality with presence. Presence does not mean liking what is happening.
It means not abandoning yourself while it is happening.
And this is where all the threads come together. Impermanence, emotions as weather, sacred pauses, micro-sanctuaries, environment, companionship. They are not separate teachings. They are facets of one way of living. A way of living where you stop waiting for life to calm down before you show up. A way of living where you stop treating peace as a destination and start recognizing it as a capacity you already have. A way of living where
anxiety is no longer an enemy to defeat, but a signal to slow down, to return, to listen. Nothing you are experiencing disqualifies you from this practice. Not fear, not sadness, not overwhelm, not distraction. These are not obstacles. They are the terrain. The practice does not ask you to become someone else. It asks you to be here as you are.
Again and again. One breath at a time. One pause at a time. One moment of remembering at a time. You won't do this perfectly.
No one does. You will forget. You will rush. You will get caught in thought. You will react. And then, maybe seconds later, maybe hours later, you will remember again.
That remembering is the path, not the absence of struggle, but the return to awareness. Over time, these returns change you. Quietly, gradually. Not always in ways you can measure, but you will notice you recover faster. You will notice you do not spiral as far.
You will notice you have more space between stimulus and response.
You will notice that even when life is hard, something in you remains steady.
That steadiness is not indifference, it is depth.
It is the part of you that has watched every phase of your life come and go. The part that was here before this chapter began and will still be here when it ends.
The part that does not need circumstances to cooperate in order to be present.
That is what you are learning to trust. Not a future version of
yourself, not a perfect version of life. This.
Right here, as it is.
And from this place, action becomes clearer, boundaries become easier, choices become wiser, not because you are forcing clarity, but because you are no longer fighting what is real. You meet life directly, and that direct meeting is where peace lives.
Not as an escape, not as a fantasy, but as a lived, breathing, imperfect human experience right here
in the middle of it all. And as you continue walking this path, something subtle begins to reveal itself. The practice is no longer something you do only in pauses.
It starts to weave itself into movement, into speech, into decision. Stillness begins to accompany you even when you are active. Not a frozen stillness,
but a quiet steadiness that moves with you.
You start to notice the moment just before reaction.
That small gap where choice lives. The breath catches there. Awareness flickers on. And in that tiny space, you are no longer compelled to respond the way you always have. You might still feel irritation, fear, urgency, but you are not immediately carried away by it. You can feel it and stay. This is not control, it is intimacy. You are no longer distant from your experience, trying to manage it from above. You are inside it, with it, listening. And because you are listening, experience does not have to shout. Life continues to bring challenges, deadlines, still exist. People are still unpredictable. Bodies still get tired. Minds still wander. Nothing about the external world suddenly becomes ideal. What changes is the relationship. You stop asking life to be different in order for you to be okay. You begin to trust your capacity to meet whatever arises. This trust does not come from confidence in outcomes. It comes from familiarity with presence. You have been here before. You have felt this tightening before. You have breathed through it before. You know now, not as a belief, but as a lived truth, that sensations move, thoughts shift, emotions peak and dissolve.
So when anxiety whispers, "This will never end," something deeper responds, maybe not in words, but in knowing. You do not argue. You do not try to convince.
You simply stay, and staying changes everything. Because the nervous system learns through repetition, not logic. Each time you remain present, without resisting, without fleeing, without collapsing into story, you teach your body that this is survivable. That feeling does not equal danger. That awareness is enough. Slowly, the baseline shifts. You may still feel anxious, but you are less afraid of anxiety. You may still feel sadness, but you are less threatened by it. You may still feel uncertainty, but you do not immediately interpret it as failure. This is freedom. Not freedom from experience, but freedom within it.
And from this place, compassion naturally expands. You start to see that everyone is navigating their own nervous system, their own conditioning,
their own fears. The sharp words of others land differently.
You do not take them as personally, not because you are detached, but because you see the pain underneath. You become less reactive, not because you are suppressing yourself, but because you understand more.
Understanding softens. Softening opens, and opening allows connection. This applies inwardly as well. You stop being at war with parts of yourself. The anxious part, the tired part, the part that doubts, the part that wants reassurance. Instead of trying to exile them, you make room, you listen, you acknowledge their function, even if it is outdated. Nothing inside you needs to be eliminated to be whole. Wholeness comes from inclusion. This does not mean indulging every impulse or acting on every feeling. It means recognizing that presence is big enough to hold all of it. Boundaries can still exist. Discipline can still exist.
But they arise from clarity, not fear. You begin to act from alignment rather than compulsion. And when you do act, there is less regret, less second-guessing. Not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because your actions come from a grounded place. You did what you could from where you were. That is enough. Over time, you may notice moments of simple contentment appearing unexpectedly. Not excitement,
not achievement-based happiness, just a quiet okayness, a sense that nothing needs to be added or removed right now.
These moments are fragile. They come and go like everything else. But they leave an imprint. They remind you of what is possible.
And perhaps the most important shift of all is this. You stop postponing peace. You stop telling yourself you will relax once things settle down, once you fix yourself, once you figure everything out. You realize that settling down happens here or not at all. That peace is not something you earn after suffering long enough. It is something you practice allowing now.
Even 5 seconds at a time. Even in the middle of mess.
Especially in the middle of mess. Because this life is not a dress rehearsal. It is not a problem to be solved before it begins. It is happening now.
With all its rough edges, all its beauty, all its uncertainty. and you are already in it. So when you forget, which you will, be gentle. Forgetting is part of remembering. When you get caught, notice that noticing has already happened. Awareness returned. That counts. You do not need to start over. You never left. Each breath is an invitation back. Each pause is a doorway. Each moment of presence is a small act of courage in a culture that thrives on distraction. And over time, these small acts add up to a life that feels more inhabitable.
Not perfect.
Not free of pain, but lived
Deeply.
honestly, here and that, quietly, without fanfare, is enough. It continued like this for a long time, until he finally encountered an elderly teacher living quietly in the forest. The teacher asked him a single question that cut through years of searching.
Were you trying to find the perfect place? Or were you actually looking for peace? In that moment, he saw the confusion clearly. He had believed peace would arrive once the conditions were right.
Once the surroundings were ideal, once the people and rules and silence aligned perfectly, he had been outsourcing peace to the external world. The teacher showed him something simpler and far more challenging. The quality of the environment is shaped by the quality of your presence. Attention creates atmosphere. Of course, some places are more supportive than others, and discernment matters, but no place can give you what you have not learned to cultivate within yourself. Peace is not imported. It is practiced. So he stopped moving. He committed to one place, one rhythm, one community. He chose his companions with care, people who valued sincerity over drama, depth over performance, practice over talk. He paid attention to how people spoke, how they listened, how they treated silence. He understood that speech.
Space and companionship shape the mind, just as surely as formal meditation does. Once he stopped chasing better conditions,
His practice deepened. Stability replaced restlessness. You can do this too, not by cutting everyone out of your life, not by isolating yourself from difficulty, but by becoming intentional, noticing which voices you let in when you wake up, which conversations you return to again and again, which environments settle you, and which ones keep your nervous system on edge. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are clarity. Choosing not to remain in spaces that dysregulate you is not rejection. It is respect. You are not responsible for managing everyone else's inner world, but you are responsible for caring for your own. When you surround yourself with calmer rhythms, calmer language, calmer people, your system learns something essential.
it learns that safety is possible, that presence is not fragile, that alertness does not have to be constant.
Calm spreads. So does chaos. What you repeatedly expose yourself to becomes familiar, and familiarity becomes normal. Choose carefully what you normalize. And this brings us to the heart of it all. As the Buddha was nearing the end of his life, his students gathered around him, afraid and unsure, asking where they should turn once he was gone. He did not point them outward. He told them to be a light unto themselves.
Not as abandonment, but as the deepest form of trust. The peace you are seeking has never lived outside you.
You are not building a sanctuary through practice. You are recognizing that you are the sanctuary. You are the space in which every experience appears.
The stillness that holds movement. The openness that allows sound, thought, sensation, emotion to arise and pass without being damaged by any of it.
This is not a motivational statement. It is not something you need to convince yourself of. It is something you can notice directly. Right now there is awareness, Awareness of these words. Awareness of your body. Awareness of breath, of sound, of thought. That awareness is not a thought. You can see thoughts come and go within it. It is not an emotion. Emotions arise and dissolve inside it. It is not the body. The body is known within it.
It is the knowing itself,
The witnessing presence. The field in which all experience happens. And it has never been harmed by what has passed through it. Every fear you have felt, every moment of anxiety, every wave of grief or joy has appeared within this awareness and then faded. The awareness remained. Call it presence. Call it consciousness. Call it your true nature. The label does not matter. What matters is recognizing yourself as that, rather than as the temporary contents moving through it. Not as an idea, but as lived recognition. This capacity to hold everything without being destroyed by anything is not something you earn. It is not a reward for good practice. It is what practice reveals. Nothing here is making you into someone new. All of it is clearing what obscures what has always been here. Anxiety does not mean you are failing. It means weather is moving through. Thoughts do not mean you are lost. They mean the mind is doing what minds do. Emotions do not mean something is wrong.
They mean life is happening. You are the space that can allow all of it. When this is seen, even briefly, something settles. Not because the world has changed, but because the center of gravity has shifted. You stop looking for safety in outcomes.
You stop waiting for conditions to improve before allowing yourself to rest.
You rest now, in awareness, in presence. The hours you have spent here are not a conclusion. They are an opening. Practice begins when you stand up, when you speak, when you pause, when you remember to breathe. Each return matters. Each moment of remembering strengthens something deeper than habit. When anxiety comes back, and it will, let it remind you, this is not regression. This is another opportunity to return. You are not looping, you are learning. Each time you notice sooner, each time you soften faster, each time you trust a little more, be patient with yourself. There is nothing wrong with you for wanting peace. There is courage in choosing presence in a world that thrives on distraction. Remember this, peace is not found by searching harder.
It is revealed by stopping long enough to notice what is already here.
You have always carried what you were looking for, and you can return to it whenever you remember. There is nothing more you need to add to this moment. No final insight to grasp. No conclusion to reach. Just the willingness to notice when you have drifted and the gentleness to return again.
Over and over, this is how the path unfolds.
Not in dramatic breakthroughs, but in quiet recognitions that accumulate over time. Life will continue to present noise, urgency, uncertainty. The mind will continue to offer stories, worries, plans. None of that is a problem. The practice is not about eliminating experience, it is about changing your relationship to it. Seeing clearly what is passing and what remains. Each time you pause, even briefly,
and feel your body, something ancient remembers. Each time you choose not to react immediately, not to follow every impulse, space opens.
In that space, wisdom has room to move. Compassion has room to respond. You are no longer being pushed by every wave.
This does not make you passive. It makes you precise. You act from clarity instead of compulsion. You speak from presence instead of defense. You rest without guilt.
You engage without losing yourself.
There will be days when this feels natural and days when it feels distant. Neither means anything about your worth or your progress. Practice is not measured by how calm you feel, but by how quickly you recognize what is happening and how kindly you respond.
Even forgetting is part of the path. Even wandering is part of the learning. The moment you notice you have been lost in thought,
Lost in worry, lost in old patterns, that noticing itself is awareness waking up. That moment counts.
you are not late. You are not behind. There is no ideal version of you that you need to catch up to. There is only this moment and your capacity to meet it as you are. As you move back into your life, let simplicity guide you. One breath, one step, one conversation at a time. Let your nervous system learn through experience that it does not have to brace for everything.
Let your mind learn that it does not have to control everything. Let your heart learn that it is already held.
Peace does not arrive someday. It reveals itself whenever resistance softens. Presence does not require silence. It requires honesty. Awareness does not disappear when things get difficult.
It becomes more important.
You will forget again, and you will remember again. This rhythm is natural.
Trust it. Each return deepens something unseen but steady.
Nothing outside needs to change for this to be available. Right here, within whatever is happening, there is room to breathe. There is room to feel. There is room to rest.
And when you find yourself searching again, reaching outward, hoping the next change will finally bring relief, pause. Feel the ground beneath you. Feel the breath in your chest.
Notice the awareness that is already present.
That is what you are looking for.
And it has been here the entire time.